All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, soccer podcast covering all things happening in the EPL from a bench perspective. And it is summertime still, but not for long. The season is right around the corner. So I have a mini preview lined up this week. So where everyone finished in the table at the end of last season. So I'm going to do the first 10, the top 10 this week, and then I'll do a mini community shield, next week, and then I'll finish with the other 10, and then before we know it, the season will be underway. It didn't feel like we had that long of a break. I think it has been less than a month since the Euros ended, and just right around the corner, the season is already here. And so, what I'm going to do is it's mostly going to focus on that, but I am going to touch on a little bit in the beginning on what did happen in the Olympics, at least on the U.S. side. So it wasn't. I mean, there was a few positives. Both the men and the women advanced in the knockout rounds. Women were expected to, as they came in one of the favorites. Men, not. No one really knew what to expect. The men's side did have France in their group, but they also had New Zealand and Guinea. So you would have maybe looked at that and thought you could probably get through, but they still had to do it, and they lost to France 3-0. It didn't really feel like a 3-0 kind of game. Neither team was really good, to be honest. I felt a couple of the French goals were more kind of I guess fortunate than anything else. Maybe the keeper kind of could have done a little bit better. There a couple long distance shots, a couple of deflections as well, but we weren't necessarily good enough to really get anything in that game. Anyways, so you can kind of just and France, they probably came in as one of the favorites, if not the favorite, other than probably Spain. And lo and behold, that final actually has already happened, and it just happened today. And Spain did go on to win, and so Spain's men's the men's side, or I guess the senior side, just won Euros. No, their U23 side has just won the Olympics thanks to an amazing tournament by Fermin Lopez of Barcelona, which is kind of funny because he plays a little bit in Danny Olmo's position, which I'll get to later. And then the women's side just a year ago. Every all international football, international competitions at all levels are kind of being run and by Spain right now. But just to focus on the men's side, we were able to advance, but we got Morocco as in the quarterfinals, and just the decision to not bring an actual striker, it finally did show up, and just the general lack of the ball quality on the ball. What was a problem as well? That was a problem from pretty much most of the games. We were able to just kind of get a couple goals past in the games after France, where it didn't necessarily show up, but once we finally played a team that somewhat was better quality on the ball, we couldn't press them in the mini turnovers. And on the opposite end, our defenders, we brought in two older vets to kind of be our center back pairing in Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman. Usually you understand that. Maybe the idea was, these are kind of more, that's probably the most important position when you have, a young team. And they did not offer any kind of help in front of the keeper. And, and they were poor on the ball as well. We weren't able to really pass. Morocco kind of figured us out. They were able to press us. They were able to press us really high, and we were just turning the ball over left and right. We didn't really have any pace in our side either, and just the decision to bring those two center backs and use our two overage players, two out of the three, it didn't feel like it was the best idea to use to do that. Even before the tournament happened, and it really really showed up in this game. We lose, I think it was 4-1. It really wasn't that close, and it was just it felt like we kind of wasted at least our quote unquote special spots that could have been that could have gone to other older age players. If you wanted to go with center back, you could have given Mark McKenzie and Austin Trusty. I think both are 25. Spots in that team. They're over the 23 age, but you could have given them a tournament to at least see what they could do. If not, we also had a whole host of strikers that whether it's whether it's Sargent, whether it's Haji Wright, whether it's William Balogun or Ricardo Pepe, that a couple of those maybe are over the age, but a lot of those are actually under 21. To be honest, they would have just qualified, Now, you have to remember the way that happens. It's reliant on a club. Maybe a couple of these players wanted to get a full preseason to kind of prove themselves for the club. A couple of these guys don't really have the greatest security in the roster spots for their club. So you understand a little bit there. Maybe there was kind of a situation where a couple of these guys could have joined and they opted against it, or I guess the club opted against it. That could have been that. But, even someone like, watching this, even someone like Cade Cowell, who has been doing some decent stuff, since he's been moved out to Mexico in La Liga MX, I feel like he would have offered us something on the wing that we just didn't have. We were using, I think it was, like, Brendan Aronson's brother, he didn't necessarily have the worst tournament, but he never really offered anything other than probably I want to say mediocre, but didn't really offer any kind of runs in behind. He didn't have any kind of like 1v1 ability. A couple decent runs in the box, but that was kind of it. We went into this without a striker. That didn't help. I think we were playing someone named McGuire, who came in as kind of like a false nine kind of player. It just the selections was just kind of off even before the tournament, and even when we were playing, someone like Taylor Booth wasn't even like used. So that was a little annoying as well. And then you look at the fullbacks. There was someone named Tolkien that kept playing when there's a player that is about to move to Chelsea, that hasn't been used or that wasn't used. So there was a lot of question marks, unfortunately. Also at keeper, Gaga Slolona, Chelsea backup. Now we don't really know how good he necessarily is, but they went with someone else, and I thought the other keeper had a couple mess ups, at least versus France and Morocco. I thought he could have done better, at least on the third goal. I just it was just really frustrating because we couldn't keep the ball, and I think it was a 1-1 or 1-0 kind of game, and Morocco gets the important second goal to get themselves a little separation after maybe even 4-0. But they get the second goal, the most important goal, after really dominating the entire first half, to be honest, where we were forced to go long. The keeper got the ball back, and we weren't able to play from the back. We weren't able to keep the ball at all. We go long and we miss the first header. So we lose that duel, and then just immediately we're out of position. The fullback's out of position. Rocker Zimmerman has to engage, and he doesn't, and instead, just the ball just kind of goes through his legs, and he's put in a bad spot. But also, Miles Robinson had a chance to maybe stop the runner going past him, and the timing of it, the quality of the ball, to also go through Zimmerman's legs. Just none of it was good. So Morocco gets a second, and then they quickly get a third after another little turnover, and after that goal happened on the left side. This one came down the right side, and just it was frustrating because they were by far the better team, and you could just see it. So not really not ideal. You don't look at this as you wanted the U.S. You expected the U.S. to come in and maybe win gold. You didn't expect if they were faced with like an Argentina, a Spain, or a France that they would have necessarily gone through, but would have had a chance to maybe make the semifinals had they been able to go, beat Morocco. And I think like the main thing you look at this is because it's mostly a U23 tournament. Is you want to see, is there anyone in this pool that possibly has a future to maybe make a step up into into the senior into the senior level, as we have the World Cup coming in 2 years. And I want to say, unfortunately, I can't say there is anyone. Uh, Kevin Paredes is had some flashes. So and we are quite weak when it comes to the wide positions. That's why I feel like Cade Cowell could have probably gotten some minutes, honestly, in this team. He wasn't even selected. Uh, Taylor Booth has you only saw him in moments, but when he came on, at least in Morocco game, the game is probably already over. But he at least offered something. There's something there. Tanner Tessman and Abuzio are both teammates on Venezia, and they're going to Venezia were apparently a second tier team in Italy, and they just won promotion, so they're going to have a chance to at least play Serie A in kind of the top division. So, we'll maybe see a little of them. I was a little bit disappointed. It's slightly in Testament. It feels I don't want to necessarily be too harsh because another thing that really showed up for Morocco is just our legs looked just dead, and it's just this is a really grueling tournament because you only have 2 days rest, and by the time that came around, just we didn't have any pressing structure to turn them over. They had a player, Richardson, I believe, who was like 6'5" and just a giraffe on the ball. We couldn't do anything with him, and he was very impressive. They had pace on the wings, unlike us, and they were just it just felt like they were better. To be honest, and so that is kind of where we're at. It wasn't it really wasn't a good summer for U.S. soccer, to be honest. Another player I haven't even mentioned is Diego Luna. Apparently, he's been part of the youth system, but he's another player that at least he's been doing some decent things in the MLS. People were surprised he wasn't even selected for this go around, and I don't know. Maybe they couldn't have used him. I can't necessarily say because what I've seen from him, he's more of kind of a number 10 kind of ball to feet player, and we have a lot of those, and we just needed to have someone because when you're not good with the ball at your feet. You need to at least be able to kick it long. That way you can force people back. Morocco had someone like Hakimi, just basically playing as an extra midfielder or even as an additional forward. I think actually even the third goal comes from Hakimi just absolutely owning Tolkien. And it would have been nice to actually have someone with pace to be able to be able to counter on that side because Morocco was very heavily reliant on playing Hakimi really high up and not really having asking him to do much defensively. So that would have been a way to kind of counter that. And so it is just not necessarily the greatest way to end for at least the men's side. How have the women done? Much more positive, at least to be to talk about. Still, though, there have been some kind of glaring things to also be pessimistic about as well. But that said, final's the final, and they're uh, about to play Brazil, which is a bit of an upset, possibly. I thought it was going to be Spain. So who knows? Who knows what we can see? But that'll be tomorrow. Also happening during the Community Shield game, and frankly enough, I'm going to watch that live. I could do Community Shield stuff later on a replay. Um, but so the first game, we beat Zambia 3-0, and then they have a red card, and so it should have been relatively a decent, in a pretty easy game. Possibly we could have scored even tacked on a few more. And if anything else, it didn't feel it didn't feel that easy or comfortable. Even Zambia were down a man or down a player, and they had a few decent counters to actually make this weird. I don't want to say make it interesting as far as the result would have been in doubt, but at least made it, quite uncomfortable for our defenders. We were quite sloppy in possession. There were a lot of really bad giveaways that just allowed Zambia to attack with a lot of space to run with the ball, and they required a couple saves here and there. So that wasn't necessarily the greatest thing to see. Sophia Smith also had to end or had to be subbed off after about 40 minutes or so into the game for a bit of a scare because obviously we've seen her since she's been good. So that was kind of a little nervy, but at least in that first half, it was quite exciting, because Mallory Swanson and Trinity Rodman were at every bit. Smith didn't score that game, but helped set her teammates up. So could have been worse, but first game out of the blocks, a 3-0 win. That's always pretty solid. The sloppiness though was something to keep in mind. Now we didn't see that in the second game. So we had Germany in the for that second game. They won 4-1. 3-1 at halftime, so we got off to a really quick start again. Sophia Smith show really, and then Swanson again, and basically they just really burned Germany with really pacey attackers. Maybe even got lucky a couple of these goals, couple deflections. I think the first ball was sent in by Rodman, so a really good cross here and there. There was a shot from distance that the keeper had to spill, and then Swanson was able to run in and get the rebound. And then I think Smith had one of those kind of deflected shots that just kind of looped in. So Germany were kind of just hit by a little bit of some lightning, and it was probably really was probably the best the team had performed at least since Emma Hayes had taken over. But it was also the first time they conceded as well. So the interesting thing is just how strong they looked, and then it did not we did not see that kind of game in the semifinal matchup. Which that's kind of doing a little foreshadowing, and then with Australia, it was 2-1. They did just enough. Scoreline doesn't really feel that like it was that close because it was really 2-0, and then Australia got one very, very late. Rodman with a scrappy goal right before halftime with I think it was off a corner kick, and they were able to. There was even a little controversy because possibly could have been ruled off for an offside. There was someone maybe was blocking the keeper's vision that was offside as the cross came in, but it was allowed to stand, and then they were able to get the second with Corbin Albert. He had to come on. So she came on as a sub, had to come on. She picked up actually a really bad yellow, like a minute into the game as her first action, which is not really what you want as a DM. You want someone to be able to do some tackles for you, and immediately coming on with a yellow that wasn't really great. But she was able to make up for that with a really nice hit, but by out scoring a Brody really pretty much from outside the box, laced one into the upper 90, and it was a big goal. And it also allowed the U.S. to win the group. But there were also consequences from this game. So Sam Coffey had to or picked up a second yellow card. Meant she had to miss the quarterfinal versus Japan or whoever it was going to be from that group. It ended up being Japan, and Coffey really has been the controller. And so this was kind of awkward because it forced Haran's role to maybe change a little bit, and it forced Albert to play, in midfield as well. It forced maybe someone like a Lavelle to kind of be, the makeshift number do it all kind of number 10. And this was a slog of a game. The US honestly got lucky here. They did not play well. And there were a lot of the problems that we saw versus Japan. We saw against Germany in the semifinals, but I also thought we saw in the first game where we it was not great. Because what they were doing is they were sitting back in a very deep block in a back five. They demanded the U.S. to basically play through them and break them down, and the space for our pacey attackers to kind of work with just wasn't there. They were not falling for that. They didn't really care about having the ball, and our center backs had all the time in the world to pick a pass as well as the midfielders, and we could not do it. We couldn't do it to save our lives. And on the flip side, they were incredible when it came to their kind of build to play. They didn't have a lot of the ball, but they were just when they were able to find those passes and those like, kind of lanes together, they were really good at exploiting. Getting us to get on one side and then a switch, to find someone open in some space in the other side. They were really good at doing that. So this was a little bit of an issue. Our kind of strengths were our attackers, or were Swanson, Lavelle, Smith and Rodman just getting them on the ball, and they just weren't able to do anything 1v1. They weren't able to beat their marker. I thought Japan did a really good job of just making it really hard for us to find Lavelle, to just be able to get on the ball and turn. Mallory Swanson was really struggling to get on the ball in that first half, or at least well into the second half as well. But the main issue was we just weren't good enough in midfield. Albert again had to play instead of Coffee, and she didn't necessarily look comfortable on the ball. The passing decisions were poor. We were very. It's not like she was necessarily giving the ball away, but it was a lot of side to side stuff. It was a lot of safe stuff, and the ball progression responsibilities were really on kind of the center backs. And Germa was quite good at that. I think they even said she had to make 250 passes this game, but no one else really was. And it was hard for us to kind of break through their shape. And I thought another player that really struggled was Lindsay Horan in this game. Just she didn't seem comfortable on the ball. Was slow when she got it. She was kind of slow to make a move. Couple really bad sloppy decisions. I thought she lost the ball more than anyone else. Whether it was giveaways, whether it was poor touches, or poor decision making, it was all leading to turnovers. And when we did turn the ball over, it felt like Japan were quite good at getting the ball and moving it quickly upfield. So it did feel Japan were the better side. And again, they didn't have necessarily a ton of possession, but they seemed to have more of an idea of what to do. And as the game kind of went on a little bit, it became a problem. Alyssa Nair didn't have to necessarily do a whole lot of work as far as saves, but she got lucky. There were a lot of crosses that just flashed near, it flashed in front of the box, flashed in the 6-yard area where just had someone else actually been there, it could have been a lot of problems. So and it looked like it was going to. So nothing happened in 90 minutes, and then it went to extra time, and then that really wasn't going the U.S.'s way either. And then out of nowhere, Trinity Rodman is able to collect a ball. She's sent it a U.S. go long, and Rodman's able to do really well to receive it, and then she's able to roof the net really from a tight angle, and it's an incredible goal in an otherwise very very poor game. I think the announcer even kind of alluded to that a little bit. A win is a win though, and so they didn't necessarily play good enough to really deserve it, but it doesn't really matter because Coffee would be back for the next game. Shannon Fox, I think, had the ball that was actually responsible for the long ball that Rodman was able to score. Another thing too is we basically stopped passing it to midfield in extra time. We were just going long, trying to find our attackers, and lo and behold, we were able to do it. And I think the funny thing here was a thought that I had, even coming into the tournament, pre-tournament, was the U.S. women's team reminds me a lot of the men's French team, French side. Really not the best midfield, kind of, but it's super strong defense and basically elite attackers that can just grab a goal from really really nothing. And I felt like the Japan game was emblematic of that. And just to, it, and going forward, uh, I do think it possibly is going to be a problem if we don't get this fixed out because we're not producing these technical midfielders that we used to outside of Rose Lavelle, who to me is probably the one that's kind of different when she gets on the ball, but her legs look leggy. Same with Iran. Iran, it's unfortunate with her because I thought she was probably our best player just a year ago in the World Cup. It was a poor World Cup run, but I thought Luhan was maybe our best player back then, and it just feels just the midfielder itself. Just we didn't have any kind of energy, and it just or she didn't have nearly the energy that she had a year ago, and it didn't feel like she was as good technically as well. It could change though. There are people that are about to step in. There's a Kuka Okwa Bethune who youngster 20, 23 years old. Apparently, she's having a phenomenal rookie season in the WSL. There's Lily that I don't know her last name. 16-year-old from Ajax possibly could. To me, I think she'd immediately kind of fits in. She seems to be one of those kind of CM, maybe even a DM kind of players. At least the when she came in, it was friendly, but she came in and she seemed to have a better idea of what to do on the ball than anyone else. Also, for being 16 years old, she looks quite big. She has kind of a kind of a grown up kind of body, at least compared to the others. So, and she at least again, this was in that friendly kind of friendly kind of game. So completely different atmosphere, completely different circumstances. But at least in that game they were trying to press her, and she was really good at holding people off. She looked bigger than others, so maybe she'll be someone to watch for as this U.S. team goes forward. Now, from the World Cup, we've seen a bit of a makeshift, bit of a changing of the guard, at least from the attackers. We've seen it a little bit from the defenders as well. There's no more Julie Ertz. There's no more Sam Backerman. There's no more because I think she was like 37 years old as well. This Naomi Goma has shown up. So we've seen a little bit of change in the guard at the back. We've seen it a little bit with the front with Sophia Smith, Rodman, and Mallory Swanson. Now, no Alex Morgan, no Megan Rapinoe, and I feel like probably close to seeing that with the midfield with maybe Rose Lavelle. This is probably being a little bit of her last hurrah, or if not, maybe having less of a senior kind of a role at least. Going forward, and it has felt like for the most part the entire team has relied on her kind of creativity for the last couple of tournaments, really. So that's not necessarily great. Same with Iran. I feel like she's kind of looking. It's possible maybe she's just kind of tired, but she just hasn't looked anything near the same kind of player. You have someone like a Corbin Albert who can maybe step up, but she hasn't necessarily outside the goal. She didn't have a fantastic goal, but outside the goal, she has looked a little bit kind of nervy, a little bit on the ball. as well. Now she is playing for PSG in Europe for them, so she's getting Champions League minutes in Europe on the women's side. So that's at least great for her experience. I think Lindsay Rand has been playing for Lyon as well, but I don't necessarily know how much I necessarily trust Albert, at least as far as being a kind of ball maker. One thing you can say is coffee, coming in has been better. So at least it feels like we have a little bit more control, and you can allow maybe your kind of pivot to be a little bit more of kind of an eight as they change. But that's just been a little bit of kind of a some of the observations I've had is just we've not been. We've not necessarily been as great, at least through the middle, but we have been. To continue with the French analogy, that's what I started with. We have been amazing with our attackers. Trinity Rodman's kind of our Dembele, where she'll just make something out of nothing that makes you go wow. But she also, for 75 or 80% of the game, otherwise it makes you like hit your head with your hand. Sophia Smith, kind of our Mbappe, to be honest. And like Rodman for the Japan game, and being or Dembele or Mbappe or Sophia Smith saved us in the semifinal versus Germany. So another game that we weren't really great in, and the commentators were complaining about the additional time travel or the additional travel where and that could be some of it. The I think it's more kind of a only getting on 2 days rest, and they had to play an extra 30 minutes because they weren't able to score versus Japan. I think that probably factored in a little bit more, but it could be something with the travel. There could be something that could be a legit excuse because that does tire you out. One of your 2 rest days, you're traveling, you have to go whatever they said it was, 400 plus miles from one stadium to another. That could be something to it, but the other team also had to do that as well. Whatever it was, we did not necessarily look nearly as dominant in that first game that we did versus Germany, and we did in the second. And another thing too was just as the game went on versus Germany, it just felt all of my concerns in midfield just continued to show up. We struggled to keep possession. We struggled to press them high, turn Germany over. Lindsay Horan again, I didn't feel played her best game. Uh, and then unlike Japan, one thing I can say is Emma Hayes did make some changes. So before 90 minutes, because that was another thing that was kind of mind blocking, like a little bit versus Japan. One of the where she probably would have opened herself to criticism for not necessarily moving quicker than she did. So what she did here, she took Lavelle off to bring on more of an kind of a more of a traditional kind of forward in Lynn Williams. Basically, she moved Mallory Swanson to be more instead of kind of the false nine to be more a little bit of kind of the 10, and it didn't necessarily show up in 90 minutes, but in extra time it did, and that basically is the change that won us the game. Another thing she did is she brought on Corbin Albert for Lindsay Horan after the 90 minutes had gone. So again, it was another one case where the game was very sloppy on both sides in the first half. Second half though was much different. Germany had more of the ball in our area. And again, they had multiple chances where a better cross would have given us a whole lot of fits. They had one player on the right wing that just was just really taking on a fullback and beating her, and it really helped that Germany didn't necessarily have a striker in the box for her to kind of look for someone in. But it was coming. It looked very dangerous. But the U.S. were able to regroup, and again, as extra time happened, Mallory Swanson started to get on the ball more. It seemed like she had more energy than really anyone else. And basically, what happens is she's able to get on the ball. She plays a fantastic kind of through ball for Sophia Smith to run onto. And it's one of those cases where it's kind of a 50-50 ball. And Smith just kind of showed a little bit more pace than maybe the center back thought. And she's able to not only get to the ball, running past the defender, she's able to knock it into the net before the keeper can come out and stop it. So just kind of a hero kind of goal, and then the U.S. were able to hold on. Actually, funny, sticking with the Mbappe stuff, Smith I think had another chance to add on a second, and just was stopped by the keeper. Smith and Swanson were able to really that's kind of they were the heroes at least in this game, and Rodman was the hero in the other game. So uh, regardless of what happens, they are able to make a final, and it is Emma Hayes' first tournament. I don't want to necessarily say they haven't been much better than they showed in the World Cup. Now, I will say it helps that we have better attackers. Alex Morgan would not be able to play this way. She didn't have legs a year ago. Likewise with Rapinoe. So having those attackers that can just make a run and just anytime you get them the ball, whether or not they are successful with kind of their 1v1 ability, uh, all it takes is just one chance to get by someone to create a danger moment, and the U.S. has that in all three parts of the front three. So, and when you include Lavelle when she's playing as well, she helps with that. So we're gonna see what happens because I feel like in the other game there was an upset. I was thinking if they play this way for Spain, they were not able to press them over, and Spain is just able to kill them with possession, and Spain had their own kind of pacey attack. I did not fancy us for Spain, but the way that Brazil was able to blitz Spain, it's entirely different because I feel like uh, it feels like we kind of mirror each other. So it'll be just kind of a case of Brazil basically play with kind of a front two. We play with three instead. Which attack is able to get the better of the back line. So we'll see how that holds up. It feels like Brazil are far more direct than necessarily Spain would have been, but again, Spain, the way that Spain weren't able to handle Brazil's kind of attack, it makes me kind of think maybe our chances versus them wouldn't have been that bad. But we'll have to see. One thing I can say is just watching this Brazil Spain game, it did feel like those were the two best teams in the entire tournament. So it would be hard not to favor Brazil. But we'll see. We have they're going to have to go up against a really good back line, really good center backs that we have, and saying that, I've talked about our attack, talked a little bit about the midfield, the center back or the center back pairing, whether it's Germa or Davidson or Sanat, have been absolute rocks. Germa has probably been the best player on the team all around. Uh, the front three have been spectacular themselves, but just all around, I mean, Germa has been really, really, at least the best center back, I think, in the tournament, if not the best player, because Listener hasn't had to do a whole lot. And it's because of that. She's been great. Her and her co-partner have been really great at reading crosses, reading danger, stopping basically the source before it materializes into something better. So that is where we are with the Olympics kind of rundown. Like I said, a lot more positive to be about on the women's side than the men's. Probably would have expected that coming in, to be fair. And a lot of it is the first tournament with Emma Hayes, and it's gonna be really funny if you turn around and you brought in basically probably the highest profile coach, at least on overseas, in someone that had been just she winning titles and Champions Leagues and whatnot for Chelsea for the last 5 or 6 years, maybe even more. And the U.S. Soccer Federation went out and picked her out. They didn't look at someone in the WSL or someone else. They didn't look at this as as just kind of a someone to just kind of uh, let someone come in and learn on the job. No, they went for the most senior, the most basically on paper, the top person for the job. They've also, I think they also were able to lure her by, uh, uh, I think they've made her the most expensive or the highest paid coach as well. But it's worked out because there've been a couple of these where the U.S. has not necessarily, I think last Olympics they weren't able to make the final. I think they ended up making bronze. And then with this one, or in the World Cup just a year ago, they were maybe knocked out before in the quarterfinals, or I don't think they made the semifinals. So just by getting a different coaching change and getting some different legs in there, some different faces in there, it shows you how quickly this can change. To be fair, but the it's not just on the player side. You have to admit it has to be something with it what Emma Hayes has done. And so, if anything else, I think that's maybe something for us to kind of think about on the men's side, on the senior side, to not because we do have an opportunity with 2026, and we still haven't necessarily. I don't even think we've done interviews. We're still kind of just linked to names. I keep hearing ideas. The latest one has been Pochettino. I think has actually shown some interest, but we'll see. We'll see where this goes. As of now, it looks like we're going to start the maybe next year with an interim coach, and that'll only give us a year where we don't really have a whole lot of ways to really test ourselves. To be honest, with any kind of competitions or any kind of friendlies, maybe there'll be a Gold Cup that's kind of souped up a little bit. I haven't necessarily looked, but that is just a little of the concern that I have. But we'll have to see how it goes. But that and again, that's kind of rambling a little bit. That is where we are for the Olympics kind of rundown. And that said, I am going to get started with a little bit more of a preview for how the top 10 went. And we will get started with Man City, because obviously everyone knows they finished first. Preseason form hasn't necessarily been that great, but they've also been playing just a whole host of youngsters with basically Holland and maybe a Grealish kind of attached to it. So 4-3 loss to Celtic, 3-2 loss to Milan, 2-2 draw to Barca. 4-2 win versus Chelsea, probably the best that they look. So a bit of a mixed bag here. No injuries. That's probably the most important thing. No Kevin De Bruyne in any of this. No Foden in any of this. Holland has looked bright. Grealish, I think, featured in most of this. He's looked all right. But backline, so there's been no. That's been another thing as well. There's really been no one senior, no John Stones, no Diaz, no Akanji, no Ake. And the backline has struggled. It's been a bunch of kids mostly. Fullbacks as well. Nathan Asbrand, I think, was a player that just was bullied a little bit by Celtic and maybe Milan. Uh, but that said, one player that has maybe impressed, that has stood out, has been Oscar Bob. So that's maybe something to think about. I don't necessarily know if the idea is to maybe send him on loan or not. He's actually looked probably the most kind of explosive player to play on the right. So we'll see what Pep has in store with him. He's a player that you kind of forget about because he's the one that really it happened in February, so you can't say he won them the league. But he had the final goal versus Newcastle in the game that Kevin De Bruyne finally returned, and that just kind of by City being able to come back in that game, and basically, as everyone knows, they just did not lose. After the turn of the calendar, that was a big game, when it happened, and Oscar Bob was the one on the end that was able to get that final goal, and the way he scored it was unbelievable. Kind of awareness and just kinda and, just, the first touch that he had, and also, the way he was able to put it away, and unfortunately for him, he wasn't rewarded after that. Pep didn't really play him after that. Youngster, you understand, but it's just that's just kind of the way that Pep's kind of been when it comes to these kind of minutes. He's done a really good job at babying Phil Foden's minutes, at least until until last season when he finally needed him. So I don't necessarily know how much we'll see of Oscar Bob, coming into this season, but it's someone to think about because another thing too is if they do something with him, whether it's a loan or something else, they need to be wary of not repeating what they did with Cole Palmer just a year ago. As no, Nessa don't really know how much Cole Palmer would have featured, to be honest. But Chelsea have to maybe or City have to maybe be thinking about maybe we don't give a EPL rival one of our best kind of youngster youth kind of players that plays on the right side. A side that City haven't really had a whole lot of help with last season. It was Bernardo Silva playing that entire time. Does Cole Palmer is Cole what we saw with him doing for Chelsea? Would have he been maybe more preferential or preferred or uh, yeah? What if he maybe offered a little bit something different than Bernardo Silva on the right? It's hard to argue no. But so I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's kind of where I'm thinking. And then another thing to touch about is at least for Chelsea, one of the surprising kind of picks to play in the center back was Calvin Phillips, and he's another player that you just kind of forget about a little bit. And he didn't look bad. Now defensively, he did look a little off, and once Chelsea were able to get on some different players in the second half, I think when Sterling came on, he was able to kind of run a little bit. It felt like the 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 instincts to kind of kick in, playing at center back is different than being in midfield, and it felt like he didn't know when to engage, when to set off. Uh, that could maybe come with more kind of reps, more minutes there. I don't really know if the idea is for Pep to actually play him in the center back role or not. We really haven't he really haven't seen like Pep has been enamored playing with him in midfield. But the thing that I was watching was the switches that he had was unreal, and the way that Pep usually doesn't like playing this way, but the way you have Holland. Uh, it feels like someone like a Callum Phillips, if he is able to get minutes in kind of a center back role, and he's able to pick these 50-yard switches, and finding someone like a Doku's feet immediately, or Holland making a run into a channel, or whoever, it is something to think about. And not only that, he was very good on the ball when it came to just making quick decisions when Chelsea were trying to press him. Calvin Phillips didn't have a bad game here, and it was you just kind of remembered a little bit where he where he was as a player. Where he was as a player for Leeds before he went to Man City. He's had injury issues, but he's had such a weird kind of career since he moved to City that maybe that rut has kind of gotten to him because he did not have a good loan spell with West Ham, as everyone knows. But he showed something here. Friendly or not, preseason or not, that was something to think about. So areas to strengthen. I do feel like they need someone next to Rodri. I don't think it's Calvin Phillips. As we say, Rodri has played every single minute of any kind of like important game now for basically 2 seasons now. His legs have to be absolutely fried. Now that said, the way that Rodri's been playing, he's been as good as anyone in world football. Just not even for not just for the DM spot, for midfielder spot, for just player spot. You can just when he plays, that he don't lose except for like one time the last game that City played in, which, funny enough, that's the reason why we have the Community Shield coming up that's going to feature a Manchester derby because the last game that the City played in, they did lose they lost to the rival in Man United, probably one of the more shock upsets for the entire year. And it was a shock because Rodri played in that game, and Man City it was finally the first time that they lost in like 2 years with Rodri in the side. We just saw Rodri for Spain, but the thing is just again because we also saw him for Spain. His legs, I don't know how he'll be able to do what he's been doing the last 2 years. So I do feel like they need someone else. Also, that was just kind of evident last season. Anyways, they never replaced Gundogan, and I don't know if uh, what they're going to do with the money that they just brought in because they've just done a player sell with Julian Alvarez. It looks like they're about to sell Sergio Gomez and Jan Kutu to Dortmund, so they're bringing in some money as well. I don't know if they're going to look at someone like a Bruno Guimaraes or it was going to be probably Paqueta before before the betting scandal happened. I don't really know if they're going to do something like that. That's probably what I would look at though, because it feels like they need someone else next to Rodri, whether or not to play alongside him or to give Rodri some rest because I just don't think that they can necessarily do what they've been doing. Also, fullback feels like a weak point as well. Is it going to be another season with Kyle Walker? I've been a little bit surprised that they have already let Jan Kutu of Girona go to Dortmund. Because Kyle Walker, to me, as good as he is, with his recovery ability as well, uh, another season of that, I don't necessarily know how much I would necessarily trust that. Now I'm not Pep, but because a year older as well, that would be a little surprising. But it doesn't feel like they're looking that way. Also, I think they still have Cancelo. I think he's come back into the team, but it doesn't feel like Pep necessarily rates him. So, and for fullback, they really have been either doing kind of a basically four center backs, really, or because they play basically Gvardiol as on that left back spot. And if it's not going to be Kyle Walker, it'll be either John Stones or it'll be like in a Kanje, really. So uh, that's just kind of where City were last year. It was a very strange kind of year, to be honest, and I'll get into more into depth as well. As far as transfer business, they had brought in Savio. I think he was either a City Academy player or he was part of the City group that on Girona. Savio just had or Savino just had a great season for Girona in La Liga, and they brought him in. So City now actually have options on the wings, which is not something I'm used to saying. To be honest, they have Savio, they have Doku, they have Grealish still. They have Foden potentially if he likes playing on that side. but they also have Oscar Bob, and it'll be interesting to see how Pep kind of handles this. We're not used to him having wing options where they can go 1v1 or not, and having that 1v1 ability that makes cutbacks balls so much easier for Holland, who's so good at making those runs. And if not Holland, it's probably going to be where Foden is going to enjoy his football because he's become an incredible finisher. Or if not Kevin De Bruyne, if he's playing, because Holland, everyone's going to be focused on Holland, and then a cutback ball into the kind of top of the box will require maybe a hit as well. So that'll be something to look at. As far as outgoings, like I said, Sergio Gomez, Koto, and Julian Alvarez to Atletico Madrid for like 90 million. So bit surprised by the number, but Alvarez is a player that you just look and he feels with a full season on a team, and when he's kind of the focal point, not necessarily reliant on Holland or playing alongside him or having to do a shadow role. It feels like he would explode, and his is one of those players. He reminds me a lot of Diego Jota. To be honest, you don't really know what he is. He could maybe play on the wing, but to me, he's either a second striker or a feature striker. And just what he is he's someone you get the ball into the box and he's gonna put a pretty good shot on it. He's underperformed or he overperforms his XG every single year, so he's gonna be someone to. And it is interesting to see what City's maybe going to do with his outgoing because they're bringing a pretty big sum in, but also he was the idea when Holland was able to play. They were playing through Alvarez. So does City maybe think about maybe trying to get someone in for a second striker role? If not, I kind of feel like Phil Foden already kind of slots into that role, and you allow Kevin De Bruyne to just kind of play playmaker instead. We'll see how that goes. As far as rumors, Kevin De Bruyne has been rumored, but he's kind of since squashed that a little bit, at least through some reps. But who knows? Once those rumors kind of start, they linger a little bit in ways you wouldn't think about. Once they start in the middle of summer, by the time it comes to the end of September, or by the end or the beginning of September, the end of August, when the window ends, they usually come back up. And Kevin De Bruyne has been linked to Saudi, and so has Ederson. So we'll see if those die down or not. At least for now, it seems like that has quieted down. They also have a host of academy players that have been linked elsewhere. Micah Hamilton, I believe, has been linked to go to Stoke City. There's James McAtee that has been getting a lot of playing time in these summer game or in these preseason games. Does he? Does someone try to make a move for him? Maybe they see him as kind of their Cole Palmer of this year. We'll have to see. McAtee has already shown he can handle the senior league. We saw with Sheffield. So that'll be probably someone. It doesn't feel like he really has a spot as far as a senior role. But we'll see. Maybe if he goes out on loan. As far as stats to run down. Goal scored, 96, probably what you would expect. So first in the league. Third for big chances created. Goals conceded, 34. Second, so you can see why they won. Top goal scorers, Holland in 27, which is sneaky impressive, considering how much of the season they missed, and considering a lot. He's up there with big chances missed as well with Darwin Nunes, and he still almost got 30 goals for the in the league. Uh, and it felt like that number kind of sneaked up on you because it did feel one, he missed a lot of the season. He missed 3 months or so through injury. A lot of games because that was during the December stretch as well, November, December, and maybe even January. And for him to still finish on 27, when I thought one, I also thought at one point it felt like he was a decoy. I was doing things like, oh, maybe Harry Kane would work better here. He still finishes with 27 goals. I kind of forgot about that. Phil Foden with 19 goals. Phil Foden was player of the season voted on, at least by the media or maybe even the players in the league. Foden did carry them. That said, Holland, having his goals as well, but Foden had so many moments eh, where he had goals that just kind of unlocked things really. Uh, they were reliant on his shooting, his finishing, from February all the way through. So he's worthy of the award. Without Foden, they probably don't win the league, to be honest. And then Alvarez did finish with 11 goals as well. He got a chance to play a lot. Another thing too is this is a very strange season for Man City because missing Holland for a large stretch of it, and after the first game versus Burnley, there was no Kevin De Bruyne for the first 5 months of the season. Where I was thinking if there was ever a time to maybe get City, it would be now. And they still are still able to get 90 points and still able to win another title. So the top players Holland, but also Foden, as I kind of talked about. Uh, but really, it's Rodri. They just the will just to not really lose. But he had a number of really big goals and moments as well. To keep that momentum. There was a game versus Chelsea where he just popped up with a goal out of nothing. It felt like he kind of snuck up with a lot of clever kind of finishes outside the box. He even finished with one in the final game versus West Ham at the end of the season. When De Bruyne came in, you have to remember he missed half of the season. He still hinted with 10 assists. So he still had a good season, and then also the back line. Gavardiol came to life really the final 10 games of the season for them as well. Both just final product, final decision making. It does feel maybe you can get at him a little bit defensively. Doesn't feel like he is the best fullback per se, but he is a gazelle on the ball. You feels like he can play that kind of John Stones role in midfield if needed, but also. He showed he has a rocket forefoot, and he also just he's hard to press. Very very good technically as well, and just felt he really did come to life towards that end of the stretch. So that's just where City we're at as far as kind of things to watch for this season. I probably shouldn't lead with this, but I am going to be interested to see how City play Oscar Bob. Whether or not he has a role, I'll make a prediction. I think he starts tomorrow in the Community Shield. Starts tomorrow as their right wing. Uh, we'll see if that happens or not. And then it'll be very interesting to see how they play with Sevilla and Doku. Also, again, City probably needs someone to play on the right. I don't think it's Bernardo Silva, but maybe Pep still likes what he does because Silva isn't really going to do anything as far as creation, but he's not really going to lose the ball either. But I just feel like Oscar Bravo offers you a little bit more. Uh, and maybe one thing I've been wondering because we saw it for Belgium uh, in their final in the game that they ended up losing versus France, where Kevin De Bruyne was played in a little bit of a deeper role next to Amadou and Nana, and it wasn't as bad as you would have expected. Now, this is probably not what City fans to hear, but as Kevin De Bruyne gets older, if they do keep him, do they think about giving him a different role and maybe make trying to turn him a little bit more into their Gundogan, where they maybe don't have to buy another midfielder. It doesn't feel like Mateus Nunes or the players that they got last season can do this kind of role. They weren't able to replace what Gundogan offers. The other idea could be Bernardo Silva. Maybe just play him next to Rodri instead. But it could be maybe you try Kevin De Bruyne and kind of that deeper role, and his instead of Kevin De Bruyne being on the end of the final decisions, you have Foden as a 10. You play him a little bit more ahead. Yes, De Bruyne maybe to do a little bit more defensive work. You ask De Bruyne to be a little bit more kind of the setup kind of guy to get you into the final third. Uh, uh, I'd be interested to see if they think about this because I think he's able to do it. I think we saw it in that first game when he came on versus Newcastle. I thought the way that he was able to get on the ball a little bit in a deeper kind of spot. He's got that ability to just find just float that ball into a 30-yard area from nothing to find someone making a run. So I'll be interested to see if we see a bit more of an adaptation to Kevin De Bruyne's game. Maybe not necessarily tomorrow, but going forward in the season. Do we see Kevin Phillips kind of have a little bit of a redemption story? That could be fun. Speaking of redemption, Jack Grealish. Do we maybe see something like that as well? Grealish hasn't looked bad this preseason. He's had a little bit more, maybe he's had motivation by not making Southgate's England team. And then City do have a lot of youngsters. So do we see someone like get sold off and excel for another team, and we have another Cole Palmer situation? That'll be something to think about as well. As far as concerns to look at this, what is City's best 11? I can't tell you to be honest. And with Alvarez doing his move, what do they do for that second striker spot? It's basically what City have been doing. They've been playing basically Holland, then you have like two tens. I don't really know if necessarily Foden and Kevin De Bruyne really work together. I feel like they kind of clash. We've seen it tried a couple of times. Then you have the wingers, you have the width outside. Really, the idea is just make sure they at least stay on the touchline. They can cut inside when they get the ball, but at least as far as where to receive it, they need to stay wide. It feels like they have that. It feels like they can do that with Doku, with Grealish. Grealish actually is amazing at doing that. Uh, and on the other side, whether or not it's Bob Savino can either play on the right or the left. He was playing on the right for Brazil in Copa. So maybe that actually, maybe it'll be Savio that actually gets to start on the right side. We'll have to see how that works or not. Uh, but if Pep does try to play a little bit more of kind of a not necessarily as a 10, but kind of ask someone to be a second striker the way that Alvarez was shattering Holland, be in the box. I honestly feel like that suits Foden's role much better than being kind of a playmaker number 10. But we'll have to see if Pep has that idea or not. So if that is the case, maybe you don't need to necessarily do bring in someone to replace Alvarez. Maybe you already have your Alvarez replacement. It's just Foden. Maybe you try to think of other ways to improve the squad. I still think they need to find someone to fit Gundogan's role, which I've already said, and maybe at fullback. I don't necessarily know what the idea is there. So, are Man City favorites still? It felt like last season they were running on fumes, to be honest, and they're still able to finish, basically not losing a game after December. But they were close. They really were. The Newcastle had them on the reps, as I talked about. I think Kevin De Bruyne showed up. Chelsea again, Rodri had the hero act. Liverpool before Diaz and Nunez forgot how to play football, or at least finished. Maybe it looks a little harsh. Arsenal with Trossard. Trossard was completely free, where he had a square ball to probably beat them there. Spurs with the Son chance. And who knows? Who knows how the what Arsenal would have been able to do had Spurs actually won that second game, the penultimate game of the season, where Man City were not good in that game either, and and then it's a situation where it's a season where they didn't have Holland for 2 to 3 months. No Kevin De Bruyne for 5 months. Rodri had to play every single game. The games that Man City lost were when Rodri got a red card versus Nottingham Forest, and then had to miss 3 games. And then I don't necessarily know if he missed another game or not. But basically, when he played, they didn't lose. And that's from December. The last game they lost, I think, was Aston Villa. So it truly is remarkable because the first game versus Arsenal, they played, they didn't have Rodri. That's another thing too, because the player that they've been playing with, now that I'm thinking about it, the player they've been playing with in that Gundogan role has been Kovacic. Kovacic is very good when it comes to being press resistant, but he doesn't offer you the stuff in the final third. So that is someone I forgot to bring up. So Kovacic probably will get a couple shots still. Uh, so I think that's kind of it. Is someone going to be able to catch City? Are they a 90 point team? 90 point team again? It does feel like, if nothing else, the way that City are able to just kind of bully people in the final third, and now that you have 1v1 players to be able to play on the wing, to be able to maybe buy a foul, buy a PK kind of late, or be able to you can't you, the way that they're able to the way that Hollins is able to just bully people in the box. Any kind of crosses coming in, and you can have runners maybe shattering off them. It does feel they're going to be better with some of these additions, but we'll have to see. I do think it's not necessarily the right question to ask. Its question is has Arsenal done anything to suggest that they've improved more so than not? And that is where we go to for the second. So with Arsenal, preseason form, it's been iffy, and to say the least. So 1v1 draw was Bournemouth. Lots of youngsters to get some minutes. 2v1 2-1 win versus Man United. A couple of positives from that game. Not really any injuries. The 2-1 loss to Liverpool. I felt this was a little bit of a wake up call because Arteta played a pretty strong 11 versus Liverpool for like 80 minutes. Odegaard played all 90 minutes. I thought they struggled to create, to be honest. Havertz back in midfield, I didn't really like. Jesus back into the team, and apparently he's playing to play a striker. Jesus, Trossard, Odegaard, and Havertz all featured, and they weren't able to create a whole lot. Without Saka, I thought they looked a little lost. Now, one thing I can say is in the Man United game, I thought Reece Nelson was quite bright for them. And for Liverpool, I thought he was a little invisible. Martinelli as well when he came on in the second half, I didn't feel like he was able to offer much. So a little blip. I mean, it is just preseason. No one really cares. But I didn't really like the shape that they had. And then one thing you can say is it all changed a little bit in the next game. So they were able to beat Leverkusen 4-1. Impressive because Xabi Alonso played a fairly strong team. And Arteta made kind of a mixed bag a little bit, but they performed really good. Zinchenko with a really nice shot to get him started. I thought Jorginho played quite well in that first half. Then Trossard was able to get a second goal. Jesus got into the scoring act as well, and then I think Havertz was able to tack on one at the end. I don't really understand why he keeps being played in midfield again, because it didn't feel like that necessarily worked last season. But that's where Arsenal have been at least to start here. And Arteta did do a lot of weird things, to be honest, last summer as well. And maybe Arteta had a little bit more of an idea of what he wanted to do, and a couple injuries kind of derailed that. So, as far as areas to strengthen. They need to find a way to be better through the middle. That is something that was just a repeat of every single thing last year. Again, whether that's Jorginho or Partey or something else, that'll be something to watch for. And the transfer business has been interesting as well. So because they have been busy. So they brought in Mikel Marino, a kind of number 6, number 8 kind of hybrid, very technical midfielder, part of the Spanish winning Euro side of Sociedad, scored the winner off the bench versus Germany, as everyone remembers. And to me, his highlights to me remind me a lot of Granit Xhaka. And I don't really know if that is the idea or not to kind of play him in that kind of role. So that could be interesting, but I feel like that can maybe complicate Bryce's role a tad. Because if they do the double pivot, you'll still need someone. You'll have two kind of doing that work, but at the same time, it's going to be a little bit different because you're still going to have to ask Rice to play to break that first line of pressure, or maybe you just ask Marino to kind of do that, and then he makes his runs. But that'll be something to maybe look at. If not, I was thinking maybe Rice would be better as the kind of number 8 kind of a midfielder that makes those runs into the channels, has the does more kind of stuff in the final third. I feel like that kind of suits Rice's game better. To be honest, I feel like he's been profiled into be this number 6, and it doesn't feel like that he really has that in his game, or he's profiled to be a center back. To be honest, but I don't have to go at Rice anymore. I am interested to see how this works. So yeah. If nothing else, it is an interesting kind of player to target. If nothing else, funny enough, I feel like they should have gone for the player, his teammate, which they have been linked to in the past, and I'm gonna get to him a little bit later as well. And then they brought in Ricardo Calafiore. Arsenal enjoyed themselves this year, as where they basically brought two names that featured a lot in the tournament. Calafiore's role is going to be interesting as well because he can play center back, he can play at left back, he can do a job in midfield. In my opinion, he's very very skilled on the ball. And the only thing I can say here is I don't really know what this does for Zinchenko because. I feel he can be just as technical on the ball. He can do that stuff in midfield, but he can play that inverted role. Maybe you play him next to Declan Rice, to be honest. And you play Marino a little bit further ahead. Maybe that's how you can actually do it, because he can actually do those passes in between. So maybe you try him at center back and he kind of inverts a little bit as or you try him at a fullback and he inverts a little bit more and basically becomes your midfield, and the back three basically becomes more of a back three where the role of maybe Ben White kind of changes a little bit. That could be something you try to think about. But I don't really know what to do with Zinchenko in that kind of role. If that is the idea, that actually does make sense to me. Because you have Rice. Rice is pretty good at making the passes that are obvious. And if not, you ask Calafiore to be the one to break your lines, and that way you can still play Moreno a little bit further ahead upfield. That actually does make sense. Um, and then the other thing to think about is I don't really know what it does for Timber, because or does Julian Timber, is he going to be playing on the left, or does maybe think maybe he becomes Ben White's backup on the right back, or maybe even the starter. So we'll see what the idea is with Julian Timber as well. But Arsenal are going to look different I can, confidently say that it's not going to be what we saw last season. Uh, and then outgoings, they have, finally, shipped a couple players that have just kind of been on their books for a couple of years. In El Neni, who just had a tournament for Egypt in the Olympics, and then Nuno Tavares, fullback that they brought in a couple of years ago. He just never seemed to work out. Just kept going on loan and loan. They finally, I think, sold him, and then Smith Rowe for 30 million to Fulham, and it's unfortunate for him because he, I think he would have featured a little bit more if not for those injuries. He started the season on the bench, wasn't able to play feature until like December. Had knocks then, and then by that time, Arsenal were able to kind of get things going again, and it never seemed like Smith Rowe was able to get in front of Odegaard and never really be able to find himself in any of those front kind of spots. So we'll see what he does at Fulham. He's still a talent. I can't say that, but his issue is he's going to a team that has Andres Pereira. So we'll see what they do with Smith Rowe. That'll be we'll talk about Fulham some other time. So for goals we have 91. So they finished in second. A lot of that really did come from them being amazing in set pieces, though. I feel like that was deceiving. Goals conceded 29. It's their first, probably what you would expect. They were the best team, the best defensive team last season. They were absolutely incredible out of possession. The way they were able to press, they played the highest line as well, and just they played the highest line, and no one was able to run past either Gabriel or Saliba. David Raya became their keeper, and you don't really remember him having to make a ton of saves in the second half of the season. There were so many games where teams weren't even able to add average, point 0.5 xG on their goal. They had a stretch from like January through I don't know, maybe April, where they maybe May, I don't know. Yeah, yeah, no, not May. March or April. Like it was a pretty strong stretch where they just teams could not get looks on them, let alone actually score on them or beat them. So that is something to say, something to highlight. Part of that was Declan Rice, to be honest as well. Has to be said about that. As far as top goal scorers, Kai Havertz did finish the season with 13 goals. Did come to life actually after he moved positions. Arteta kept trying him in midfield and it wasn't working. And I'm surprised we're seeing it a little bit more to start this season. I don't know if it's a head fake, if maybe he just wants to get Havertz and Jesus kind of played together at the same time, just give them some chemistry, and then that'll change. I just think Havertz should be there. Should be there either. Their main guy going forward. I think he offers a little bit more than Jesus. Saka did finish the season with 16, kind of sneaky because it feel like Saka kind of ran out of gas a little bit towards the end of the season, but still 16 goals for a wide forward is incredible. He's still crazy young as well. Other than Saka, it feels like, or other than Salah, it feels like Saka is the second best right winger in the league. I'd have to think about it a little bit, but I feel like I'm comfortable saying that. But because I don't consider someone like a Foden to be necessarily played on the right. I feel like he's kind of a 10. I'd have to think about that, but I feel comfortable saying at least top three, yeah, yeah. I think I would be comfortable saying that. And then Trossard had really a big second half of the season as well. The reason why Arsenal were able to tick on and to push City as far as they did was Trossard was able to come in, and after it happened after Martinelli got hurt in a kind of a and that was a bit of a to go down memory lane. Arsenal were winning, beating Sheffield by like 5 goals after like 30 minutes, and then Martinelli got hurt. It felt like Arsenal were trying to break some kind of like goal record that day, and Sheffield started to not really appreciate that and started to that game got a little cagey, and it led to Martinelli getting hurt. And that factored in a little bit because Arsenal had to play some different had to play someone different in that position, and Trossard doesn't have Martinelli's pace, but what he does have is he has an incredible finishing ability. Again, similar to kind of that Diego Jota. You don't really know what he is, but when he gets the ball into the box, he can finish. And he had a number of really big goals that just kind of changed the results of the game. And the funny thing about Trossard is I still don't really know where you play him. You have to start Martinelli, and so. I don't really, maybe you can try him as kind of the false nine, but Trussard, it feels like he's just kind of in a little bit of a rut. He doesn't really have a starting spot when he comes off the bench. He is as dangerous as really anyone. And then Odegaard with 8 goals, but Odegaard also had, I believe, 10 assists as well. So top players, Kai Havertz, he really did come to life. After Arteta did the changed him from midfield to actually basically be the kind of guy that would yeah, he would do the false nine stuff, but he would make runs into channels. And one game that comes into mind is because Liverpool fan is he destroyed Liverpool with the runs in behind, and being able to not just runs behind but by the center backs, making runs into channels, being really really awkward. Uh, it doesn't feel like Kai Havertz is necessarily the quickest as far as acceleration, but he does have a stride on him, and he's quicker than he looks, and he can make those runs without the ball. Also in the box, he's always going to be a target man as well. It just feels like he doesn't have that instinct to really hit it first time. So that is the one kind of thing that feels like he can still kind of work on, and we saw that in Germany for the Euros as well. And then Saka, Trossard, and Odegaard kind of to end it with top players as well. Jorginho became a big part of their season after January, and that kind of gets into the other thing too. It happened because playing Rice where they were, it wasn't working. There was a game versus Fulham, I believe, after I think it was after West Ham where they already lost to West Ham, they already lost to Aston Villa, and then they lost to Fulham. I think so. The 3 losses in a row back in December and or maybe November, whenever it was, and it was the game versus Fulham where they really were poor. Just Rice would get the ball and he would not see any kind of pass going forward. So they would go side to side. After that, they brought Jorginho back to kind of play a little bit either alongside him or to even play a little bit alone, have Rice play a little higher up, and that's when their season did change. And if just had Arteta made that change a little bit earlier, who knows? Who knows what would have happened? Rice wasn't bad though. When he was able to go a little forward, he did finish with 7 goals and 8 assists. That really isn't bad uh, output at all. And then Saliba was absolute rock. You have to say there as well. And so things kind of watch out for. Uh, do they have the squad to go all the way with City again? Or they do, and will they be boring again? I guess that can kind of be the thing to say. And again, after Arteta made a couple switches, there was a stretch where they did flip something. And they played some of the most attractive stuff in the entire league. And then again, it seemed to coincide by trading after Martinelli got injured for Sheffield. But the other thing too is Arteta did some weird things after getting some players back. So first Man City, he played Gabriel Jesus on the at left wing. Maybe Martinelli wasn't able to start that game, but that ended up hurting. They could have tried Trussard there instead. That ended up hurting them. And then versus Aston Villa, just a couple games after that, or maybe even very following that, they played Gabriel Jesus again on the wing, or maybe they started him at striker spot, and they played Havertz again in midfield, and they played Declan Rice through as their main kind of number 6. Where so they sat Jorginho, and that was another case where they were just Arsenal were really poor on the ball. They couldn't make it move. They couldn't. Rice couldn't progress with it at all. Rice was going safe, and then or go backwards. And then you have the issue with Saliba and Gabriel. They kind of had that same kind of thing in their game too. It was rough. They were reliant on really Odegaard being the guy to kind of drop in, get the ball, and then also carry it, and then finally do stuff in the final third. So. And that's a lot to ask for your main creator in Odegaard. So that's the reason why I feel like that's been their problem. That's been their snafu a little bit. We also saw it versus Bayern Munich. That was the reason why they basically went out in the Champions League is they asked Declan Rice to do a job that he's just not really comfortable with. So how does Mourinho kind of change that dynamic? The more I'm thinking about it, I think Calafiori might actually be the one that changes that dynamic. But we'll have to see. They also have Thomas Partey back. Uh, Maybe we actually see him. To be honest, and instead, one thing you can say is outside of soccer, they at least seem to be building up some depth in a situation where they just haven't had in a long time. So maybe that helps them out as well. I do think is this enough? Looking at what they have with Kai Havertz, I don't really know. And I am a little bit surprised they haven't been linked to any kind of strikers, knowing that Ivan Toney is going down to the last year of his contract. It feels like someone like an Osimhen's been out there. There was Benjamin Sesko before he had to, re-signed with Leipzig. There's Dominic Solanke out there. I have been a little bit surprised there haven't been any kind of movement to bring someone else in, but maybe Arteta just kind of likes where they are. Uh, it, it feels like Havertz could explode, uh, to be honest, but because he's going to get chances. But the only thing is he going to be able to take them? Because he also had a number of misses when he was 1v1. He just again, Kai Havertz has a lot of qualities to his game. It's just it doesn't feel like he has that. So that is just kind of the also. So that'll be something to kind of watch for. The other thing will be what is Gabriel Jesus' role in this team going forward? Because I feel like he's lacked confidence so far in the two of these summer games that I've caught. Does Reese Nelson is he able to get minutes off Saka or not? You don't want Saka to be run into the ground. I don't know if you tried Trussard on the right. Maybe that could be the idea. I think they actually did that versus or it was Martinelli. They did Martinelli on the right versus Everton in the final game of the season. It was okay. Arsenal were not necessarily great in that last game of the season versus Everton. It took them a real long time to actually score. I think they were even losing to Everton. Uh, though they were better in the second half from what I remember, but I don't remember much of that game. Also, Declan Rice and Zaka have both had really long summers. So does that show up this season as well? That could be the case for a lot of teams, to be honest, having a lot of their big stars having long summer tournaments. So it won't just be Arsenal. Man City have that with Rodri. As far as what they need to build on, they need to release the ball quickly. I think one thing to finally end with them is a lot of their fans have talked about field tilt. That's something my brother has talked about. Something I had never really heard before until last season. And I there's a situation where in some cases, yeah, Arsenal were just kind of a victim of kind of their own success in a ways. Teams kind of knew not to really give Saka and Martinelli a lot of space to run behind them. But the other thing to think about is there'd be times when someone would make a run, the ball would be on, and they wouldn't release it. And so, or maybe they would just do it too late, and it'd be offsides. In some of that cases, I do think it was their own doing. But the other thing too was just again, we saw it in a couple of those games a little bit towards that back in March or maybe it was April, and back in December when Arsenal were up against a bit of a mid block, or maybe not necessarily a deep block, kind of a mid block, where you had teams weren't necessarily pressing their center backs; they were just basically demanding you to play through them to be able uh, to to uh, uh, to advance the ball. There was one game, or there was one team in particular that really gave them fits. It was before Bayern Munich. I think it was FC Porto, where they seemed to have Arsenal kind of pinned a little bit how to play, and Arsenal really did struggle. They were able to get through. I think because of I think they won through PKs, but that was something that was starting to show up a little bit. So does Marino kind of help up with that? I think he does, to be honest. Calafiori, I think does as well. And if maybe Timber is able to or even a Partey is kind of played instead of Rice. I think you see a little bit more. I think you'll see the ball move a little bit quicker than what we saw, and not just side to side, either from long switches or just maybe you'll see a little bit more carry with the ball. But that could be something to maybe see because I feel like that is where they struggle. They were not able to find they weren't able to get Odegaard or the ball higher upfield without having Odegaard having to drop just to receive it. So that is where Arsenal are at. Where do they maybe finish? I'm in a weird situation where I don't see them finishing second again. So I'm on the fence. Either they do win it all, or I think they maybe suffer a little bit of a setback. But there's just that that's just kind of just going off instinct. I don't have anything to really base that off of. I need to actually see how they play for the first couple of games. How Arteta is going to fit some of these new additions in. Uh, if it because it is possible that they have improved and they are able to do a little bit more. I still look at that front line and I think I don't really see how Havertz is going to be able to get you across the line. I feel like you do need a 20 goal and a 20 goal a season striker to put things away. One thing to say about is one player that really did suffer last season that had a fantastic season before that was Martinelli. Uh, and it took a while for him to go. It felt like maybe he was, and then he was injured. But I think Martinelli really struggled by not having someone be able to play through his runs because he would make these runs, and it wasn't like a someone like a Thomas Partey or someone else wasn't able to find him like they were a season before. Does Martinelli able to change that or not? If not, if you're gonna be slow in your build up, and you've got this field tilt stuff, I honestly think Trossard is a better player to play in that situation. I think Trossard makes better decisions in your final third, but it doesn't feel like they kind of play that way. So I don't really know. Also, if you're gonna play Calafiori inverted, you're not really gonna be able to ask, and you're not gonna have your fullback, whether it's last year it was Kirar, and it wasn't even Zinchenko. You're not going to have your fullback being able to do any kind of overlap. So, who offers you width in that kind of situation instead? The season before, it was Granit Xhaka. So there were two things that really Arsenal were missing from last season. They missed Granit Xhaka leaving them, and they missed Thomas Partey. Uh, what do how is now that they have a full preseason? Now they've had a season with Havertz, seeing what he can offer. They've had a season with Declan Rice. They've had a couple of seasons now with Gabriel Jesus, and I still don't really know what you necessarily do with him. So I do feel like there's still a way for Arsenal to improve. But that said, if they did go on to win it, would I be surprised? The answer is no. So that is something to say as well. And so it's kind of where we are with the kind of the first two. Figured it would be a little long, and then Liverpool will probably be a little long as well, and then I'll try to speed it up. So Liverpool with finished third in Klopp's last hurrah, and now we have the Arne Slot era, and preseason form has given us a look at how this is going to be different. So they were able to beat Betis 1-0, and then the change was versus Arsenal. So they beat them 2-1. Really, really upbeat and strong first half. And the second half, they played without a striker. Arsenal did have a little bit more of the ball, but Arsenal weren't really able to create much looks either. I thought for having playing a bunch of kids, they looked very good defensively. Was a number of Arsenal's main attackers. So that was kind of the key takeaway that I had that game. And then it was really Man United where they were strong. Strong in the first half, strong in the second half. And you started to see patterns of play that looked very repeatable. Lots of great combination play in the final third, lots of quick build-up, uh, lots of ways to kind of slice United open. Another thing too was there was a lot of talk coming into this that Liverpool were maybe going to be a little slower on the ball. And people were kind of worried a little bit about that. They don't want to have this kind of pep idea of how you play, where you kill the team with passes. Because Arne Slot has kind of talked about that in past interviews. And if anything else, to me, it was a mix of De Zerbi's Brighton. To be honest, with kind of Klopp's DNA, they were doing this kind of build up stuff. But when they were able to break, and when they had either space to run in behind or they had space to carry it, they were still breaking upfield really, really fast, and they were still committing numbers really fast. So there was a lot of excitement, at least versus Man United. But they also did look a little bit vulnerable defensively. Keller had to make a couple saves, and the backup keeper Yarios had to come in. So I think they had to make 8 saves combined. Rashford was bright for United, so you can say that. So the defense could have been a little bit shaky. Konate, I thought, struggled being asked to play on the left side with his weaker foot, so that maybe was some of that as well. But the positives was Salah had a number of chances to create. Scored versus Arsenal as well, so he's looked good this preseason. Him and Elliott seem to have a really good understanding of each other. Fabio Carvalho has come in after a really successful loan from Hull City, and he sent Casemiro back into retirement. Scoring versus Man United with having a little, drop of the shoulder. Then he got it onto his left foot and was able to finish. Scored versus Arsenal as well, just kind of being a box crasher. He's been really, really exciting to watch this preseason. Versus Man United, another player that just kind of, showed up playing a little bit of a different role was Ryan Gravenberg. Played a little bit more of a pivot. That's the biggest change that I've seen from so far from the slot ball that then I saw from Jurgen Klopp has been the idea of playing two in midfield and not necessarily just one and then two ahead. They call it a double pivot. To be the way, and if they do play that way, the reason why I'm going to be intrigued is obviously if you have two, they're in the middle. There's less task to ask one player to maybe cover like 40 yards, like they were asking, Fabinho in the past, and they were asking Endo to do last season or McAllister when they were doing this 4-3-3 with that single pivot. When you play with two, it's different, and when you play with two, the role can be different as well. Either you can switch it off, who plays deeper or who's not. But Gravenberg in this role was a lot of fun. He doesn't have to cover nearly as much ground. He was very good getting the ball in the turn. He was very progressive with it. He was great. He was also really good with his tackles and really good with his duels. So I don't really know if the idea is to do this, actually in a game more in the season. But I liked what I saw from him. I didn't necessarily like what I saw from Curtis Jones, who played alongside him. So that's something to talk about as well. And in the Arsenal game, it was Dominic Szoboszlai who actually played in this role and played really well. So we're starting to see a little bit different. It doesn't seem like it's going to be this 4-3-3 that we've been seeing for so long from Jurgen Klopp's side. Uh, that is going to be a change. But that's why I feel like the De Zerbi comparison from Brighton a couple years ago does feel right to me. And I like the idea of adding saying it's with Klopp's DNA because that's what I've seen. But there's something with Brighton when he had his Matomas, when he had his players to go up ahead, they weren't afraid of being really direct too. When he also had Alexis McAllister, there's a reason maybe you use that comparison. They were that Brighton team when they finished a couple of seasons ago. Uh, they were very good. They were quietly really direct for having a lot of possession too. So in a weird way, it makes sense that they were also linked to De Zerbi in the beginning. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it feels like they've brought in someone in that is very similar. We'll have to see how that pans out or not. As far as areas to strengthen, that number six area is still kind of a question mark. And Endo's maybe been ruled to be out the door for this preseason. Endo wasn't starting in any of these games. That was a bit of a surprise to people too. I've been saying the dream has been someone like an Adam Wharton, but he would cost a fortune and a mention and all that other stuff. It looks like they actually are linked to Martin Zubimendi now. Woke up Wednesday morning and all of a sudden there was news that they were trying to they wouldn't have an issue as far as paying a release clause or even negotiating a fee. It's been more of a situation of can you get the player to accept a move away from that Basque region where he's grown up with, and apparently a number of clubs have tried to lure him away for the last few years. It's been Arsenal, it's been Barcelona, and he's rejected them. And it's possible he rejects Liverpool as well. But I don't know. For 25 years old, he's just had a really good. He didn't play a whole lot in Euros, but he just had a really good final. He had a really good second half when he had to come in, and it feels like maybe the time is for him to make a move. Now that said, football is more than just a career. It is a lifestyle as well. These players aren't robots, and someone that has a lot of family and friends close by that hasn't really left the area. You could understand him maybe wanting to stay. I don't really know what his ambitions would be, but if they get him, this would be really really exciting. And funny enough, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Endo, just much better on the ball, but and obviously younger. So because Endo wasn't really bad last season, I didn't love him having to being tasked to cover that much distance by yourself. If you're playing in a pivot, all of this changes. So we'll see if that's the idea or not. The other thing to think about is don't really know what the role of the left back is going to be in this system. A couple of the games when Tsimikas has been playing, he's been asked to play in midfield. A couple of the games, Tsimikas was also making runs, bombing runs either into the box or offering width. So that is something to think about as well. A lot of mock lineups I've seen from Liverpool fans is they want that left back to be more of kind of a center back to be very defensive minded, so it shifts to a back three almost. And then you have Trent Alexander-Arnold or Connor Bradley basically be your right back that either plays in the midfield or plays a little higher ahead, has a little bit more of that free will, and you just kind of shift it a little bit. Right now, that's what Robinson does, and in the past, it has also been what Trent does, and that's kind of been the reason why in a lot of games Liverpool have been stretched. Are you able to kind of switch that around a little bit? I don't really feel like that suits Robinson's role if you're going to ask him to play deeper. I don't know if it's really suits Simics' role either. Though I do feel like he is better at doing that. So, do they try to target someone there or not? I don't really know. I do feel like you probably could play Joe Gomez there, but there has been takes or there has been things thinking that Joe Gomez might be out. So, as far as transfer business, absolutely nothing so far. Uh, but it does feel like things are about to finally kick into gear with Zubimendi. It feels like they've been linked also to Mabedashvili, the Georgia keeper that had a really good Euros for Georgia. Plays at Valencia, I believe, and he had a really good season for Valencia as well. He was considered one of the best keepers in La Liga. Still young as well. I think he's 24 or 23. And it looks like the idea is to actually buy him now, maybe loan him out and let him stay in Valencia for a year or two, and then when Allison leaves, he becomes your kind of senior kind of keeper. It does feel like that's the thinking that they're doing. I don't really know if they actually do it or not, but that is definitely more kind of an outlook or outlaw or more of a long term kind of outlook. But we'll see. And as far as outgoings, if they do Zubimendi, there's thinking that maybe but Stefan Bacecic, the youngster that had a lot of injury issues last season, but has shown a lot of promise when he has been able to play. Maybe he goes out. Curtis Jones, I would actually like to maybe see him go out for a loan because I feel like he needs to get some minutes in him because I still feel like he still doesn't have that kind of football brain that other players have to release the ball when they need to. Fabio Carvalho has been mentioned as well from another club's being looking at him, having a really good preseason. I really hope not. I really hope they keep him because I'll get to it later. And then Ben Doak. Ben Doak has been mentioned as well, and I hope not as well. And it looks like it was going to be Jayden Danns, but apparently he's back after an injury has apparently shut off his move. That's unfortunate for him because you don't really know how much Slot is going to necessarily trust him. Also, he's apparently injured out till October or November as well. So even when he gets back, because apparently it's a back injury, it'll probably take a while for him to just get back to fitness. So we're probably not going to see him until even the end of the year, end of the calendar year, and then by January, maybe he does go get a move to maybe does get a loan move then. But you feel for the guy because he really did show a lot of promise last season in the few games that he was able to play. So as far as stats to go off, goals scored, third could have been a lot higher. Knowing the number of chances that they had, goals conceded 41, so much higher, and but also third. So you see where they finished in the table. Top goal scorers, Mo Salah, Ballon d'Or good to be honest. The first half of the campaign with 18 goals, and then he did struggle after January. Got hurt as well at African Cup of Nations. Just feels like it was a matter of time. They never ever give him rest. Klopp's kind of gotten lucky, in my opinion, of not of basically overplaying him. Now it could be some of Salah's doing as well. And then when he finally came back, because he rushed to get back after his injury, and they made a mistake by playing a little too early. Now Diego Jota got hurt versus Brentford, I think in February. They moved Salah to basically come on after that to kind of replace him, and that wasn't the best idea because Salah ended up basically re-injuring himself after scoring a goal and getting an assist in his first game back. But he wasn't the same after that, and I didn't feel like he was healthy the rest of the season. So, but he's looked, that said, he's looked fantastic in this preseason, and looks like he's going to be a different Salah. He ended up maybe doing a little turkey. He looks a little different as well, as you'll see with the hairstyle. That's all I'll say. And then Darwin is with 11 goals, and I feel like that's criminal considering the chances that he was given. I still want to believe in him. One thing I am going to say is it is possible that the way that we've seen Slot's system, I think he's going to benefit from this because it's not going to be just him alone at times in the box. It looks like he's going to have someone next to him. It looks like Slot's asking the number 10 kind of player to not necessarily play behind him, but to actually play as a second striker, to play kind of near him. And it looks like the shape is almost a 4-2-4. They're pressing with four. Uh, the 10 can start, playing, underneath, but it seems like in the box, he's kind of close to each other, and that's what we've seen, at least with Elliott, in the preseason. But it could be, that spot could also go to Salah, but it could also go to Fabio Carvalho as well. It could go to Dominic Sloboslai as well. So there are a lot of ways, or Gakpo could go to Gakpo. There are a lot of ways for him to kind of play with us. I've liked how they've started the season. I've liked the setup that they've gone with. And then Diego Jota with 10 goals, Diaz 8 goals. That could be improved, and then Gakpo and 8 goals. Also, that feels like that could be improved. Sloboslai only on 3 goals was a surprise, but they also weren't really asking him to kind of be in the box that much. He had a really bad injury after about January or so, so that kind of showed up a little bit. You would like maybe a little bit of a higher return. I've seen people think that he could possibly play on the left wing. To be honest, he's been playing right mid, so that would be a bit of a surprise. But Just the way he's got such a good right foot. You can play him inverted. He can has that 1v1 ability, and then he's really good at making that decision making. But whatever it was, Liverpool just basically collapsed after after February or so last season, because for a good stretch of that last season, they were basically the top dog. It looks like they were actually going to go out in a bit of a kind of a really fun kind of way for to end that Klopp year. And just after February or so, it just everything flipped. And I'll get to that a little bit later. As far as top players last season, Salah obviously, Darwin Núñez still, given given the way that he's able to create so many chances, it does feel like the reason why they had all those looks, it was still because of him and his runs and the games that he missed. That was something that I was noticing. The games when maybe like a Gakpo was played instead of him, Liverpool chances per game, shots per half, or shots on target, whatever, chance creation, it was significantly down. So damned if you do, damned if you don't, in that kind of sense. But Diego Jota, his only issue was he got hurt for Brentford, and thankfully, it wasn't really something where his muscle issues finally, showed up. I think it was Penick or someone landed on his knee and just kind of, clattered it. And that really, Liverpool's kind of, drop in form coincided with that. There's so many of those chances that the Liverpool had, whether it was versus Man United versus Man City, whether not necessarily Arsenal, but in any, versus, Everton, in a lot of those games that they ended up dropping for Crystal Palace, Jota, in my opinion, at least healthy Jota, because Jota was able to play at least first Palace in the second half. Healthy Jota, I think that he puts those away, and I think Liverpool are able to at least win out. It could be an entirely a homer thing to say, but that is just kind of where I'm at. Another thing to think about is they had to do a lot of last season without Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he was spectacular versus Arsenal in the FA Cup game. Then he got hurt, and then we get this guy Connor Bradley that no one had heard about, and he was amazing. People actually were wondering, well, when Trent Alexander-Arnold gets healthy, do you even play? Do you even start him? Do you let Bradley even continue? And then unfortunately, Bradley actually ended up getting hurt towards the end as well. Then Alexander-Arnold was able to come back into the side, but uh, he was unbelievable last season as well. And just felt like Klopp didn't know what to do with him towards the end of the season. They were trying to play him. There would be times when they would actually play him in midfield. They were playing Joe Gomez almost at right back at times, and just there's that spout right around Christmas time where Alexander Arnold was either having a big assist or big kind of goal scored versus Fulham, scored versus Man City, and it felt like he had finally technically arrived as far as being the player that everyone feels like he is, but finally being recognized for it. And it just felt that injury versus Arsenal in the FA Cup just really did kill any kind of momentum. Another thing too is you missed his ability to spread the ball. You missed a lot what he could do as well. So another thing to talk about is Harvey Elliott. Harvey Elliott was quietly incredible last season, and just I think the biggest mistake that Klopp made last season was not trusting to play Harvey Elliott, even when guys returned, even when Slabberschlag returned, he wasn't really fit. Even when Curtis Jones returned, they weren't really fit. What happened was after about March, Harvey Elliott stopped getting minutes, and that ended up hurting. Alexis McAllister as well was special from the January through March run, and just again, this team was good enough to win last season, but they didn't, and they actually finished third. So, things to talk about. What is slot ball? Well, based on what we saw in a couple of the early games in the U.S. for preseason, I do think it's a mix of De Zerbi building from the back. A lot of it has been asking to do a whole lot with the goalkeeper, so I'm a little bit worried with Allison in that sense. But it is a lot of focus on building up from the back and having a lot of numbers that way, and that is kind of what De Zerbi does, and he likes, at least in this so far, we've been seeing it him doing it with a double pivot in the center. He's been having two. You've been having the fullbacks a little bit further wide, a little higher up, and it's asking a lot for your center backs. Center backs go wide, and then you have your keeper, and that's kind of been their build up shape. So it's a 4-2-3-1 kind of the way that they're doing it, and it kind of shifts to more of a. It can change the way that they're building up in certain progressions. When they're attacking, it honestly looks like a 4-2-4, where even the fullbacks can go even higher, and maybe you only have two, and you either have a two, and then it keeps going up. Uh, But the thing that's been interesting to me has been their number 10, the guy that plays normally in that kind of cam role, central attacking mid role, as you can say. He's really been a second striker in a lot of these. He's been closer to Darwin Nunes or closer to whoever's been playing striker. It's been either either Diego Jota or some cases it's been Fabio Carvalho, or sometimes they haven't really played with the striker and they've just kind of been playing with basically dual tens, and then you have Salah kind of being the guy that plays a little forward. But it has been different. So it's been exciting, to be honest. They've looked really good in a lot of these preseason games. But the thing that I'm really excited about is you've been a lot of changes in the game, and it started with Pep Guardiola, but Arteta's done it too. Been a number of teams that have, it's not just them. It started with Thomas Tuchel's been doing this for a while. This idea of building with playing a back three instead of backs, kind of building with a back three. And when you have a back three and then you have a keeper that can also do it, it's four. You have to really press. And what I was noticing is first back three is Liverpool did struggle. Uh, we struggled to kind of press them and turn them over. At least in these early preseason games, Arne Slot has been pressing with four. It really is a front four. That's what I'm just talking about. Where it's not really you're not really playing with the 10. Harvey Elliott is right now. At least when they're pressing, Harvey Elliott has been right up there, and they're matching four with four, and it's really risky because if a team's able to play around you, then you only have two in midfield. You're kind of weak there, and you're asking to go 1v1 at the back as well. So this could be risky. But it's led to a lot of turnovers. It's led to keepers going long. Onana didn't really enjoy it. Whoever was playing for Arsenal in that game didn't really enjoy being pressed and being hounded. And their press looked really good again. And again, this is just preseason, but that's been what I've noticed. So that's fun. That's uh, we'll see if that continues or not. It feels like there's a lot of ways to be versatile, a lot of ways to kind of change this a little bit. So, as far as what to think about, what concerns maybe, uh, not having a six is going to be a problem. I don't really love Curtis Jones there. Gravenberch he showed a lot of promise, but still, uh, I mean, McAllister is what he is, and he's fantastic on the ball. But he worked with Brighton because he had a Casado next to him. You don't really have that kind of destroyer next. You want to have that kind of destroyer next to McAllister. That's why someone like a Zubimendi, who isn't necessarily a destroyer, though he does win a lot of his duels, and he's been incredible actually at winning his aerials. Having him would help out a lot of this, uh, and having someone that just has the awareness to be in the right positions to stop counters, maybe to make the right fouls or when to engage, when to not, when to run back, because Liverpool have struggled here and struggled for a couple of years now. Uh, they were never able to replace Fabinho and a couple of the guys that they were always linked to. Someone like a Chouameni, they just always let slip away. And it looks like they finally maybe found someone to finally come in and do the spot. Uh, we'll see if they get this through. It's going to be hard for me not to be a homer. But I still have some issues. The left back you talked about, but also at left wing. I don't. Last season I did not love what Luis Diaz was doing towards the end. He's always been very good on the dribble. Yeah, to be fair to him, and also it's hard to really go at him because he had to have had such a hard year. Knowing his family was kidnapped and he had to deal with all that. Uh, I am going to make a little of an excuse. He also before that he had to come. He had to uh, come back from a really bad stretch of injuries to his either the ACL or is something in his knee. Uh, so you can give him a little leeway. And unfortunate, the unfortunate thing for me is he didn't really look great for Colombia in the Copa as well. He's maybe struggling a little bit for confidence, but I just want to see him have some end product because a couple of these times where especially versus Man City, that'll be always the game that kind of shows up, and uh, it, it's on him to I guess kind of change the narrative. So hopefully maybe we see a little bit of a bounce back. If not, he's also been like to be maybe sold because there's always been kind of this flirting around with Barcelona. So who knows what we see with Luis Diaz, Dorian Nunes as well. Got to become a better finisher. If not, I'm going to keep pulling my head out because it doesn't matter if it's Slot, if it's Klopp, if it's Pep, whoever. If you because you can't have your center striker missing 30 big chances a game or a season. Um, his XG was close to almost 19 goals, and he finishes with 11. That is just yeah. And is I mean, again, damage because you can't necessarily play without him because they at least with the Klopp setup, they would go into games where they would go from maybe averaging like 22 shots on an opponent to maybe averaging only 8. With Gakpo tried in that middle instead. It's not been the same, but who knows? Who knows what they're able to do? One thing I have noticed is the passing and the kind of movement and patterns of play in the final third has been different than what I've seen in recent times. This is a side that is technical, that can move the ball quickly, that everyone can kind of carry it a little bit if they need to. It seems like they can move around in different positions. This feels a little bit different. The way that again, it's only preseason, so you don't really know how much to buy in or how much to go overboard. But it has been fun. It has been fun to watch. So uh, where do people to kind of end with? Where should people rank Liverpool? Like I've seen a lot of people have them all over the place, and I can't blame them. The unknown factor is it has to be monster, uh, uh, but it also is a team that basically did Trek City and Arsenal all the way to the wire. But that said, the kind of narrative out there that Klopp was getting a lot more out of this team than maybe he should have, I do think holds water. Uh, because the the team for the last few seasons was reliant on either having Thiago being brilliant in midfield, or having Firmino, dropping in the final third and being a little bit of a brilliant kind of creator, and then having solid finisher chances. Or before it was Mane, and then it was Diego Jota, and then every time that Jota's been hurt, that the attack has kind of just disappeared. To be honest, so. And basically the last couple of years, who knows where they finish if not for Allison being absolutely amazing. Van Dijk had a really good bounce back season last year, but a lot of teams were still able to get very good looks on Allison. And one thing I'm worried about a little bit with asking Allison to or asking the keeper to have a lot of duty on the ball. That Allison is very good with his feet. He's not really great on being under pressure and being pressed, unfortunately. It's one of the things I can argue with confidence actually that he's overrated at that because a lot of people think he's brilliant. He's like Ederson with his feet, and he's not. What he is he when he has time, he can pick. He can be like Kevin De Bruyne. He can basically pass a ball into a trash can from 50 yards, and he can find that player. He can find that pass. He's amazing at that. He can go long with better than anyone, really. And shot stopping is I'm not gonna. It's either him or Courtois as the best shot stopper in the world. Um, but when you're asking him to make a decision and to keep the ball on the ground, he has some uh-ohs in him. So a little concerned a little bit there. But so as far as where can this team end? Uh, you think about what happened last season. They suffered the injuries after January, so no Trent Alexander-Arnold after that, no Salah after that. There was a lot of blows, to be honest. And where it was the Brentford injury with Jota that really did just kill everything. Because no Salah, they were still able to get some goals from elsewhere. They were still able to get some production. They tried Luis Diaz, weirdly enough, that actually worked. They tried Elliott, that was working. With no Trent Alexander-Arnold, all of a sudden this kid Connor Bradley came in and was incredible. They were able to win, beat Chelsea in a final, playing a bunch of kids. This was weirdly working. And then, funnily enough, the funny, already mentioned it a little bit. The weird thing to me is after March, when everyone came back, when Salah came back, when Szoboszlai came back, Curtis Jones came back, that's when they just uh, that's when things flipped. They started playing instead of someone like an Elliott. And so Elliott started to be benched. There was no Jota. There was a lot of these opportunities came to players that just couldn't finish, whether or not it was Man United, Man City, uh, Crystal Palace, and the list just came on. Also versus Atalanta, and that's just from where it ended. So They created enough looks down the stretch to beat to win to win out basically, and that's including Man City. The way that they played versus Man City was, I think, it's the best that they've looked maybe ever under Klopp. Uh, it's easy to kind of forget about that. They lost to Man United, or at least they drew Man United, and then lost them in the FA Cup game, and that was a game they probably could have scored 10 goals aggregate. Uh, you know, I don't necessarily want to say it would have been 10 goals apiece, but they had so many chances there. What's Crystal Palace as well? Palace played well, to be fair, but it still felt like that was a bit of a shocker. And then Everton as well. Just the goals started to dry up. They also started to be kind of poor on set pieces. Nunez continued to miss big after big. Diaz as well. Salah didn't look fit when he returned, and that the biggest gripe I'll say about here is I don't love how there isn't really a plan in place, whether or not Salah stays or goes, to give him minutes. And I don't really think it's Elliott. Maybe that is what they see. They do have someone like a Ben Doak, who's 17, who's now 18 years old. Maybe the idea is try to give him some minutes. Uh, I don't really think Fabio Carvalho is that kind of player. He seems to play a little bit more on the left side. Seems to be a little bit more of a 10, which he's talked about. I don't know what they do on the right, whether or not it's maybe they can do Luis Diaz, and the idea for him would be to actually not really care about playing on the left because he doesn't really have left foot. Uh, Stay on the right and I'll keep offering width, and actually maybe it'll work better for him because what he'll do is he'll look for cutback crosses with his right foot, and if not, maybe he can try to pin stuff in with his right foot because he looked really good versus Arsenal in that one time he was asked to play on the right. Uh, so that is the one thing I'm thinking about because even if Salah leaves or not, because his contract's coming out too, and that's kind of awkward as well. That either needs to be just talked about now, or finish now, or maybe before the end of the year, so he doesn't leave for free. So whether or not you extend him or not, one way you can keep one if you do extend him, one way you can keep his legs and to keep him being an incredible, productive player for you is you limit the minutes somewhat. You allow someone to at least come in, whether or not it's after the 70th minute mark when you have a lot of the lead, where you can kind of limit some of those sprints because he doesn't like coming off either, or you can give him a rest here and there. It doesn't take a whole lot to make these players look completely re-energized. That's something I noticed with Arsenal last season. There was an Odegaard game. Odegaard missed basically a game and a half, and he came back after a little rest and looked absolutely incredible. He looked lightning again. So it doesn't take a whole lot for these people to just recharge their batteries a little bit, but you still need to do it. You still need to take a game or two to do it in a season. And just Liverpool haven't been able to do that with Salah, and that has been a bit of a thing I've been really worried about. Already talked a little bit about the fullback with Robinson, where his one trick is to just kind of bomb upfield. I don't really know if that's going to be the task that Arne Slot wants. So, already talked about not having the six as well, and the uh, the last thing to talk about, I guess, with Fabio Carvalho is one reason why I really don't want them to sell him is you look at the expected goals for a season. He overperforms it by the same amount as Jota. So that to me says he's a good finisher, and Liverpool did not have good finishing last season. Also, I think Szoboszlai has a lot more that he can offer when he's not maybe asked to just kind of eat ground and be kind of a number eight to just kind of do defensive work for say a fullback. If he's being given a different role, a little bit more to play advanced, I think he can offer a little bit more as well. Go to Gakpo as well. He looked incredible for the Euros for Holland. So maybe that can be the idea. I would like to see Cody Gakpo and Holland and Nunez play together more because we haven't really seen that. Uh, uh, and then let's see. The last thing to kind of talk about is uh, Darwin Nunes. I guess it's fitting to end with him. Watching the way that they've had a little bit more patterns of play. Uh, some fans have been thinking that actually Darwin Nunes doesn't have the touch to do this. Maybe when they got him, he can't do this. I think he can do it now. I actually think he's going to really benefit from this, having a lot of people near him. I think that he's just going to have to just basically put his laces through a ball, and as long as he can kick it, keep it on goal, whether or not even the keeper, saves it. If you have a lot of people in the box, you can get second balls to go in and get cheap goals that way. I really think he is going to explode. The numbers suggest he's supposed to explode, and it just hasn't happened yet. I'm a nerd at heart, and I feel like the way that the stats suggest this is a player that's supposed to be 25 goal a season striker. I believe it, and either that happens, either he gets injured. I don't. There's no way he can end with 10 goals a season. That'll probably be something that ages terribly. I think he finishes with 30. That'll be a little bit of a prediction. I think he explodes. Uh, and that's not to say that necessarily this was a Klopp problem. We're not. I just think I think they're going to be able to attack differently. I think he's going to really benefit. Maybe especially if Liverpool can actually get goals where he doesn't have to be the first one. He can actually Nunez can be the one that actually tacks it on a little bit more. I think he's going to get a lot of goals that way. So we'll see if that happens or not. Because also when you get the first goal, that forces you to, or when you get a lead, that forces teams to kind of play, push up, get their lines to push up like a little bit more against you. That allows you to get those runs into space. And Nunez loves making those runs into channels and into space. I think it happens. So we'll see if that materializes or not. And then I guess I'll end with I'll only do the top four. I kind of lied. Uh, I'll end with Aston Villa. So I'll do the top four, and then I'll just kind of we'll see where we are next week. I'll do Community Shield, and then just kind of maybe finish with the top 10, and then do a different episode for the other 10. With Aston Villa and with probably the coolest story of the season last year. Preseason form has been pretty good for them as well. So 3-0 win over Walsall. Have no idea who that is. Then a 3-0 win over Spartak at Trevina, and then the 4-1 loss over Columbus Crew was a bit surprising. And then they lost to Leipzig, and then they lost to Club America. So not necessarily the greatest run of form, at least results wise, but they've had a really solid summer, and I'm going to expand on that. They've been probably as busy as any club, other than like Chelsea. Also, they played five games, other than a lot of teams have only played four. But areas to strengthen, I thought they were too reliant on Ollie Watkins. We got really lucky, to be honest, that they were able to finish in fourth. Also, I thought they were really reliant on Lee and Bailey. Just kind of being both had to really be kind of everything in their attack. And coming into this season, they've got Champions League football. Is that added to the schedule? Also, more games added in Champions League football. Something to think about as well. So teams need to be need to be prepared for that. You need to have because the more games added with Champions League just for the group stage. It's not really even a group stage. They have like a weird format this year. So you need to have depth, regardless of whether you want to or not. So I think we've actually seen Aston Villa kind of take that seriously more than others. And funny enough, they went into this we're thinking they maybe had PSL issues where the financial fair play would come into attack, forcing them to have a sell off. That hasn't really happened yet, and they've done a lot of business. So they've signed Ian Matson, the fullback that we saw for Dortmund doing really well. He was at Chelsea, and then Chelsea decided to lose him. I guess actually they bought this from Chelsea, but he had a really good second half of the season for Dortmund. Before that, he had a really good stretch for Burnley in the championship when he helped them get promoted. So he's a good player. He's really lightning fast with his feet. Player on the left. He's fun and bought him though for 48 million. So not cheap. But it'll give them some depth, give them something different if they don't want to do with Luca Digna or they don't want to do Alex Mourinho. So. That'll be exciting. They also brought in Samuel Inling Jr. Maybe more of a little bit of a youth kind of player to think of, maybe more of a project. But at least I've only checked him out on highlights. But someone from Juventus, he looks like he could be really something. He could explode. We'll see how much he's able to play for them or not, but it's just something to think about. But here's the one player that I'm really going to be interested in, and I'll share some comments about him later. They brought in Ross Barkley for $6 million, and if this works out the way I'm thinking about, I think this will be the signing of the season, especially considering how little they had to spend for him. But I'll get into that a little bit later. Then they brought in Lewis Dobbin, 12 million from Everton, and then Enzo Barrenechea. Barrenechea. There we go. Argentine for 8 million. He's looked quite good for them in preseason. And then Cam Archer returned from loan. That's pretty exciting for them because I feel like he can maybe do something that Ollie Watkins does, and I don't know if the idea will just be play in his stead or maybe try them together in kind of a different formation, play him next to each other. If nothing else, Cam Archer shows he has goals in him. He can make runs in the channels. He's got some pace to him, got a lightning pace to him, and he's got a rocket shot on him. So I'm gonna be really excited to see him. I'm hoping they don't loan him out again. I want to see them keep him. And then they brought in Jaden Philogene Benetz, who really excited, really had a really good season last season for Hull City. Really exciting kind of winger, wide creative player. Uh, He'll be fun. And what they've done is they've sold Moussa Diaby for like 65 million to a Saudi club, and they brought in this Philogene Biddens guy. So it's not just going to be Leon Bailey reliant on being able to be their kind of ride creation. It feels like this Biddens guy is going to maybe not necessarily start for them, but probably feature for them a lot. So we'll see how that works out. And then they paid 60 million for Amadou Onana. We saw for him in Belgium. This guy is an absolute tank of a player. Uh, 64 million. They bought him off Everton, and the only thing to think about was as good as he is, because he is very, very good. He can eat up so much ground. He'll help them defensively like no other. He's very technically good. He's good at getting the ball in the turn and carrying it. Maybe not the best passer, so you probably want a passer next to him. That's where I think Ross Barkley really does work out. It's either him or Tielemans. Kind of think Barkley works out quite well there. What they've done is they've lost Douglas Luiz, and Douglas Luiz was a big player for them last season. And had they not brought in Barkley, I would have been actually a little bit worried here. But I love this idea. And then Moussa Diaby they lost, and then they lost Tim Erebangnam. Basically, what they did is a little bit of a swap deal for it. Erebangnam, kind of a project player. Played in midfield. It looks like they've sent him to Everton. So they did some deals with Everton with Lewis Dobbin and Onana. Uh, Goal scored. Let's see. Do I have 76? I guess I have 76. And then goals conceded, they were 61, so eighth. A little bit surprising, a little bit. So 20 more than Liverpool. I guess 76. They would have been fourth. 10 less than Liverpool. Yeah. Uh, so the reason why Liverpool were third for both. So you see where they conceded. That's kind of where the thing to do to think about. So something they can maybe improve on a little bit, but also it feels like the goal scored was um, a little hard to replicate. I'll say so. We'll go with Ollie Watkins with 19 goals. Honestly, could argue he was player of the season, despite Foden's brilliance. Foden wins City the championship, or so you understand why, and Foden was deserving of it. But also Ollie Watkins was a one man hero act in a lot of that season last year. Carried their attack in many ways. Him and Leon Bailey. Leon Bailey also had 10 goals, but also a couple of assists or a double digit assist. And then Douglas Luiz showed up with 9 goals. Top players for them last season, Watkins and Bailey, as mentioned. And I am going to be really excited to see. It was Douglas Luiz, and I'm going to be really excited to see what they do next to him or with him out. So whether or not it's Barkley, honestly, Tielemans can maybe factor in as well. Or you could also play Tielemans a little further ahead. You also have a couple players that they're returning as well. There's someone like an Emery Buendia that can maybe play a little bit as a 10. All of a sudden, Aston Villa look like they're going to be different, and I'm going to try not to go overboard. Whether or not where they finish, I think they're going to be a better team. Looking at this, top players to kind of finish with: Paul Torres, Ezra Konsa. So they were good at the back, and then Emi Martinez was spectacular as keeper as well. So kind of things to watch out for. Uh, Players returning from injury, they have a lot. They lost Tyron Minks the first game of the season. They're going to have him back. Emin Buendia as well is a really fun one player that they just did not have the entire season last year. He can play as a number 10. He can, the way that Ollie Watkins makes his runs, Buendia is a player that can see that. He can also drop in and play make. But Buendia is a fun little player for them to have. They also have a Barbecu Kamara returning from injury, and they don't really have to rush him now that they have Amadou Onana. They have Jacob Ramsey as well, who looked a player for them the season before. Had a lot of injuries last season for them, wasn't able to get it going, but he looked a player before those injuries. He's returned, and Morgan Rogers as well showed he had a lot of things to offer before he got injured at the end of the season. But there were a couple of games where he looked really really bright. I think for Brentford he showed up with a couple really nice finishes. Uh, and so kind of things to kind of watch out for is how does Unai Emery kind of try to play Illing Unya Jr. and Matson, Ian Matson. Again, probably not the best news for Luca Digne or Alex Moreno, but there is Champions League football, and you need to have some depth. So they finally do have some depth, and not just they still have John Duran as well. So you have Duran, Ollie Watkins, and now you have Cam Archer. So they finally have some. There's a way for Unai Emery to kind of share the minutes around, and there's a way for him to actually, in case there's an injury, for that not to completely torpedo their season. As far as things to build on or what to look for, can Ollie Watkins repeat what he did? Probably not. He not. I'm not going to say he can't repeat goals wise, but he can't be relied to do the kind of running all by himself because at times he really was. They need to find a way to share those sprints around, share those the runs in the channels and whatnot. And I feel like they have the pieces for Unai Emery to do that. So hopefully they do. As far as what does Douglas Luiz losing him do, and this is where I mentioned how Anana slots in as far as being kind of a number six to immediately come in and just kind of be an extra guy to just win a lot of duels. Whether or not you're going long, he's going to win a lot of headers. Whether or not it's doing challenges, if anyone's trying to do any kind of counters on them, if anyone's trying to break on Aston Villa, he's going to have really good recovery pace to at least not just catch up, but also put in. He's got really good long legs to put in some slide tackles to win the ball. He's going to help them defensively, but also where they go as far as build up play, as far as trying to create through midfield. Ross Barkley was able to do this with Luton Town. What is he going to do with? And he was basically the most successful ball carrier in the league, and he's going to have license to be more more kind of attack minded with someone like Onana staying further back. The profile and look to this says this is going to be really really good. We'll have to see if it actually is or not. But again, it's hard not to be really not to be very optimistic about this. So we'll see. We'll see if it is or not. So because Ross Barkley was, I think he was like the most successful ball carrier in the league in attempts and success rate, and his ability to slip a ball into slip a pass basically into a line. I spent all summer screaming about how England should have been playing Adam Wharton in midfield. Looking back, I could have said the same thing about Ross Barkley. Ross Barkley probably should have been on Southgate's team. Maybe not necessarily starting for them in Euros, but frankly, the only reason why he wasn't is because he was playing for Luton Town all last season. But he was, whether or not Luton Town were playing Man City or playing, I would say, or playing anyone else, playing Arsenal, he looked good. Or if Luton Town were playing someone for bottom of the table, if they were playing like a Nottingham Forest, it did not matter. Ross Barkley was special for them, and really the only times that the times when Luton Town did not have him, that is when they looked like they were going to go down. This is going to be, I think it's the biggest wild card coming into the season for any team, because again, Lewis and Douglas Luiz should have been a big blow. I think they're fine, at least where there's not going to be much difference, and if anything else, there's possibly improvement here. The other idea could be Tielemans there instead, and you just play Imbudia ahead. But I think Tielemans could be maybe more, beneficial for you as kind of further ahead as your 10. But either way, this is going to be exciting because they have profiles here that match. They have a lot of different options that they can play as well. And then defensively, you're going to have. I think defensively they're going to be better. You have Anana to help you out. You have Babaku Kamara to come in. As well when he gets back from injury. And then you have Tyrone Mings back. You have Konza that showed that he could play. He had a really good Euros last season, or really good Euros in the summer. You have Paul Torres, who I think was defender of the season candidate before he got hurt. The back line is going to be really strong as well. The only maybe kind of look to this that looks kind of weak is Matty Cash at right back. But Matty Cash is still a good player. It's just defensively, you don't really think of him as kind of your a Champions League kind of right back. But I could be being unfair to Matty Cash. But that really is the only area I look at. It's hard to not really buy this team. I don't know how much stock to put into. Also, so the other thing to kind of end with is last season you look at who what teams kind of overperformed their expected points. This is again the that advanced stat stuff. Aston Villa were one of the best when it came to overperforming where they were supposed to finish in the table by 10 points. Uh, but you understand that there were a lot of games that they just won that probably they shouldn't have because Ollie Watkins was just unreal good. Can they repeat that this season? I don't think they can, but I think they've gotten better. I don't think it's gonna be that reliant on just individual players. I think they've got a roster that actually can help them in a lot of different situations, that can help them with an increased game load. I'm really excited to watch this Aston Villa team, and there could be a case where the Champions League takes its toll on it, and we see what happened with Newcastle. Maybe they have a setback and finish seventh. Would I be surprised? I wouldn't. If Aston Villa finished fourth again, or even higher, would I be surprised? I honestly wouldn't as well. I'm buying what's happening with Unai Emery and this kind of project. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting them to be as active as they've been in the transfer window, but also to pick the kind of players that they have has surprised me as well. So I keep wanting to doubt them. I keep wanting to write them off. That's what I did last season. I don't want to do that this year. They've lost key players, but I also feel like they have additions. They've at a minimum they haven't gotten worse. So what is the objective here? Can they do a Champions League run? That could be the thing too. Maybe they don't just because Unai Emery is a really good cup coach. That could maybe be a thing. Aston Villa could honestly be a sleeper team for the Champions League. Um, I feel like I'm maybe going too far in a stretch there, but I don't know. I mean, it was only back in November. This was only a team that was 3 points off them, off Liverpool, 3 points off first in Liverpool City and Arsenal. They were with them pretty much the entire season. They did have a little bit of a dip, still able to finish fourth. It's hard to not say that if anything, Aston Villa are here to stay. The likes of Chelsea or Man United, or the only one I can see them maybe catching them is Newcastle. To be honest, but at least I, I, I I haven't seen Chelsea and United. I haven't seen what they've done to actually be that big club that actually replaces them. So that's kind of just where my head is at. The other one could maybe be Spurs, but I'll get to that next episode. So I'll kind of end it there where we are. We're at 2 hours and okay. Uh, so I did the top four. Ran a little long, but it is what it is. One thing I do want to end with because we are talking EPL again. Stuff that's happening in England, and let's see. Uh, One thing to end with is there's been a lot of unrest actually in England, and not to do a bit of a rant. I'm going to read this off because I'm not really great with thinking off the top of my head. Is so we're back to covering kind of the sport I love most, or I guess the league I love most, and it does feel like it's not happening at the best time. And the last few days, it feels like maybe things have gotten a little bit better, but the last few days have been really ugly. There's been little race riots in large parts of England. There's been a lot of toxicity brewing over there for a while, going back to the Brexit vote, and there have been a lot of people with platforms over there that have just grown a following by demonizing all immigrants, really going after just all Muslims in particular, but just anyone from Africa or even Asians or Asian people, and just standard Twitter accounts. It's gone from standard Twitter accounts to people in media or politicians like Nigel Farage or Suva Breverman, and it's basically been kind of their ploy to demonize and ostracize others, separate others, and just they're creating an in group that can feel superior, but also out groups that can be used to just kind of scare others. And it came to a head after a 17-year-old with a kind of a giant blade killed 3 girls after a Taylor Swift kind of dance studio. And before anyone knew details, there was all these large accounts that were just kind of blamed anyone they could, or named anyone that was a Muslim, used their kind of picture in the area, and it sparked a massive uprising where someone like a Tommy Robinson led a march of people all across the country demanding, or basically to be lawless and to terrorize anyone that wasn't English looking into them or white, because the whole thing was we aren't safe anymore. And it's scary, and it's coming at a rotten time. And maybe I don't know, football coming back can bring some of that country together. It feels a little pie in the sky, but I do think something needs to be done with these social media accounts. And it's just it's allowed a lot has been allowed to people just outright become like Nazi and Hitler like hate accounts. And it's been normalized to spread around in record fashion. And there needs to be consequences for this uh, because it's fundamentally anti society what they're doing. And honestly, it is white supremacy. And again, I am going a little bit on a stepping stool here, but I don't know. It's a scary time, and there's been a long campaign to message out to get racism in the league. We've seen that gone from even players taking that step further to even kneeling, and they even that doing that annoyed a lot of people because there was this idea of you don't need to do that. We're done with racism. You can see from this, you're not, and it's important to call this out. It's also important to show the youth that this is not okay. That's not okay behavior, and it's important to keep ringing the bell because if you don't counter this, the other side is going to just convert even more people. Uh, and it's not just that's just in England, but it also there was a social media kind of induced panic over a boxer in the Olympics wrongly identified, and she was ruthlessly harassed and attacked and misidentified by anyone from just again just normal Twitter accounts to really famous and powerful people like J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk. Everyone we've seen what's happened with the Palestine and Gaza situation as well, and just human life at its core just doesn't feel like it's being valued right now, and it's all about what type of human you are. That to me, it really is terrifying. And again, going back to, I don't know if it's COVID that screwed people's brains out, but it feels like there's a case of maybe people are I don't know too online, maybe not being socially active, but not having neighborly connections with people outside their communities. But it does feel like something has happened. Algorithms on social media have been designed to just feed people hate and outrage 24/7 to keep you forever angry. And I just social media just itself just feels like it's changed. Social behavior itself it feels like it has changed, and it's just every election, whether it's here or Scotland, England, Germany, France, even Japan, is being fought over immigration. But not just that, it's been fought over kicking people out that don't feel, don't look right, don't suit the culture. That's what people are saying. There's no compassion or empathy for other people, uh, and just to go in a different way, immigrants are being used as scapegoats to explain any kind of bad event happening in society, whether it's a lack of housing due to property owners not wanting additional homes built, crime due to cuts to policing or policing practices not making sure certain crimes continue to continue certain fears. There's a lot of reasons for people to be angry, but it's not necessarily immigrants that should be the target of the anger. It's people fueling that for hate and fear and to ride political ride division into political power. And as we have wars, famine, future droughts, storms, it feels like it's only going to displace even more people from their homes in the future. And so, where will they go? None of this feels sustainable. And the other thing too is you've had things like the Syrian civil war, you've had austerity economic policies after '08, the financial crisis happened where it's created more this environment to materialize and just it doesn't none of this feels sustainable. It needs to be called out. And not just called out, it needs to be I don't know, I can't say penalized or punished because I don't know how you would do it. But it's we've seen it go far than it really should have without people pushing back. And one final point to think about as well is people might think it's not impacting them because maybe they're not an immigrant in a certain country. Maybe they look a certain way. But the way reactionism works is it starts small. It starts with people that are deemed weird or different. It starts with people that are deemed in a group that's maybe vulnerable, disadvantaged. Oh, it's not affecting me. Why would I care? But it grows. And it grows to then people that are handicapped could be next. It grows to people that aren't maybe starting families or having children, or maybe they aren't having the right amount of children or the right kinds of children. And then it eventually works up a hierarchical system. Eventually, they go after maybe not you were not worshiping a certain way, or maybe you're not it just it continues and it continues to go up, and just it's why it needs to be defeated. And because frankly, it's anti-society, and society cannot exist. Economies, the way they've been structured, can't work. The Premier League itself can't work if this is allowed to continue. And it does feel like maybe there's been something that's kind of calmed it down. But seeing those images a week ago happening in England, happening not just in London, happening in all sorts of towns, happening in Ireland as well, it was scary. And it needs to be called out. So I'll do what I can to call it out. That's all I really can do here. So sorry for that little rant. And that said, off my step stool, that's a show. and I'll be back to talk about the Community Shield next week, and maybe to talk about the rest of the top 10, and then try to do maybe another episode to feature the other bottom 10 because I'm not going to get to them probably. So, anyways, appreciate you tuning in, and until then, it's going to be back as well. And until then, you stay squatty and stop recording.